Chapter 299. The scenario has been completed. Calculating reward. Obtained EXP, 80,000. Game coins, 100000. Obtained equipment, none. Missions completed, January 1st. Completed special and hidden missions, 0. Unlocked world building, none. Time of terror points increase, 0. Highest terror points, 0%. Average terror points, 0%. Your terror rating is embodiment of valor. Extra reward obtained. Please select it later. Obtained skill points, 2650. Additional bonus from skill points, EXP, 26500. Game coins, 100000. Scenario cleared reward. Randomly draw a usable piece of perfect equipment. Calculation complete. Please continue. It was important to note that there was a limit to the amount of game coins that could be obtained from clearing the scenario and additional skill points, and the limit was 100,000. In other words, after clearing the scenario, other than the extra reward and hidden mission, the maximum that a player could obtain was 200,000 game coins. This kind of design that limited the player's income was a way for the Dream Company to control the in-game exchange rate. This was because the market's monopoly on consumables, apparel, and miscellaneous items was not enough to stabilize the market. Therefore, they had to do something about the circulation of the currency. This was a complicated problem. It involved the number of players, their skill level, and many other factors, and they were all related to the amount of game coins that could be generated. From the statistics of the past month, the players' clearing rate was around 60%. Since the open beta, the total number of players who had logged into the game was more than 10 million. The number of players who logged into the game at the same time during peak hours was around 4 million, and the number of top players was less than 1 in 10,000. In other words, most players would not get the reward for clearing 4 out of 10 scenarios. They would only get some skill points and items. Even for the remaining 6 scenarios, the amount of reward they could get depended on how much they had contributed to clearing the scenario. Therefore, basically, only the fixed teams of those guilds or the best players would be able to get 200,000 game coins. Most players, under the premise of 60%, would have to depend on how well they performed before they had the chance to get it. Of course, this had nothing to do with the filthy rich players. For them, it was good to get more game coins from the scenario, but if they did not have enough game coins, they would top up. However, the players who were willing to spend tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of RMB were the minority. A responsible and competent gaming company had to consider the majority. The ideal situation was to not let the players have so much money that it would lead to inflation and not let them be so poor that they could not make ends meet. Only in this way would the prices and exchange rates in the game be stable. Only in this way would more people feel at ease to recharge. Many online game agents or developers liked to go to extremes when it came to this crucial issue. Often, right after the early stages of the game, the players would be too poor to continue playing and would be forced to top up. These were all short-sighted actions that brought about their own destruction. Your title has been updated to Pioneer of Darkness. After the calculation list popped up, the system notification rang in his ears, announcing that the title Unpredictable Fanatic had come to an end. Feng Bujue had mixed feelings when he heard the notification. It was a good thing to have a new title, but without the ability to use Kaya. He had no summoning skill that he could use. However, the character mission, use the summoning skill and successfully summon the summoned creature 50 times. Current progress 1/50th inch, was less than 1/3 completed. However, as the saying went, if the old did not go, the new would not come. Feng Bujue did not dwell on it. After all, the character mission would be completed eventually, so there was no need to rush it. He opened the game menu and studied the new title ability. Name: Descent of the War Demon. Special ability type: Active consumption. all life points, stamina points, and sorcery points effect. Demonize oneself and gain ghost-like combat power. Transformation skill lasts for 3 minutes. Can only be activated once after entering the scenario. Remark: when the skill is activated, the life points will be increased to 300% of the player's original maximum. Stamina points and sorcery points will be considered unlimited. During the demonization, the player will not be able to use any weapons or consumables other than sorcery weapons. The buff from all equipment will disappear. The game menu will be blocked until the demonization ends. When the life points are depleted or the time limit is reached, the demonization will stop, and the player will have 1% life points, 0 stamina points, and 0 sorcery points. In the next 5 minutes, the player will be immune to all medical skills and consumables, buff type. This is a death trap, Feng Bujue complained. It is so rare for me to clear a scenario with my bare hands, and this new title ability is just pushing me to the edge. Before he went to get the extra reward and the perfect equipment, he looked at the time. It was already midnight. This killing game had taken much longer than he had expected. When Feng Bujue was working on the touchscreen, he noticed a friend request and a mail message. He looked at the people who had added him as a friend. Shiva, 7 kills, and King of Shadows were all there. Ha! If I take a screenshot of these 3 requests and post it on the forum. Feng Bujue read with a smile. Fine, people will probably say it's photoshopped. Feng Bujue accepted them one by one, but the next second, he went offline. By doing so, he could effectively prevent the other party from harassing him with a communication request. He got up to use the toilet. After washing up, Feng Bujue lay back down in the gaming hub and switched to sleep mode to log in. He set the time to log in to be instant. In other words, once his brain entered sleep mode, the connection would be activated. After returning to the login lobby, Feng Bujue looked at the time again. It was 1:15 a.m. After changing the login mode, 7 kills and Shiva could not contact him anymore. At that moment, King of Shadows was also in this channel, but his status was in-game. Xiao Tan, Brother Long, Jin Fugut. Feng Bujue scanned his friend list. Almost everyone was in the scenario. This is strange. Did Passing Rain and Laughing Soul not come online today? He mumbled to himself as he opened his mail. The only mail was from Xiao Tan. The content was, Brother Bujue, I noticed that you haven't logged in or picked up your phone. You're probably stuck in non-sleep mode, so I wrote you this mail to tell you about it. At around 9 a.m., Xiao Ling called to tell me that Sister Rain suddenly felt unwell. Xiao Ling is now at Sister Rain's home to accompany her. She told me to tell you not to worry, it's just a sudden cold. It's nothing serious. That's all. I didn't know when you would come online, so I queued up on my own. Feng Bujue repeated with some thought. Don't worry, huh? At that moment, Passing Rain's face appeared in Feng Bujue's mind. He said softly, speaking of which, she is already on the list of people I care about. When did this start? Chapter 300. After entering the storage room, Feng Bujue went to claim the extra reward and chose the 40% EXP. The maximum EXP for level 28 was 280,000, so 40% was 112,000, which was more than what he would get from completing the scenario. After claiming the extra reward, Feng Bujue walked to the other glass tube with a nervous heart and prepared to draw the usable perfect equipment. At a time like this, I shouldn't have too high of an expectation. Feng Bujue grumbled. He was giving himself a heads-up so that he would not be too disappointed if he got something that would be a scam. The white light gathered before his eyes and soon, a beautiful sleeveless armor floated inside the glass tube. The armor was silver in color, and it was decorated with golden carvings. Under the illumination of the light, its surface actually gave off a kind of floating hazy feeling. Name: Artemis Embrace. Item type: Armor quality, perfect defense points, None element. None special effect. Greatly reduces the damage of all long-range attacks. Equip requirement. General ability C cannot be traded after pickup. Remark: with the protection of the Goddess of the Moon, the player is immune to normal arrows, bullets, and lasers. It can also negate part of other long-range attacks, special bullets, long-range skills, or special equipment, and non-physical damage. Not bad, Feng Bujua said. It is as good as your sister's mass-produced holy garments. He did not forget to mock the relationship between Artemis and Athena. Since the echo armor was just a belt, it did not affect Feng Bujua when he put on the new equipment. Even though it was a bit out of place for an ancient Greek armor to be paired with a belt from a Marvel comic, it did not matter since he had always been wearing clothes. When he put on the armor, Feng Bujua felt a sense of satisfaction and joy that he had never felt before. This should be the first perfect equipment that truly belonged to him. Even though he had used the legendary one-hit kill pistol and the perfect cold-blooded armor before, those were things that could not be brought out of the scenario. The feeling of putting on Artemis' embrace was like when he was testing the car at the shop. He was driving it home. Of course, with Brother Jew's personality, he would not be proud of a single piece of equipment for too long. His attention soon moved to something else. First, he checked his inventory. The fuel air bomb, detonator, freeze ray gun, backup parachute, prepared for the original plan to raid the Batcave, and so on, they were all gone. From the evaluation screen, it was clear that he did not bring anything with him. This killing game was full of twists and turns. From the moment Jason's appearance, Feng Bujua's plan was completely ruined. However, after clearing the dungeon, he did not lose much. He only lost some ammo and 2 health potions. For now, there's no need for me to restock. I'll go to the market after the next scenario is over. Feng Bujua thought to himself. I'm still one step away from level 29. Before level 30, I'd better not touch my skill points. Therefore, there's no need for me to go to the thriller box. After giving it some thought, he decided to play a game until he reached level 29. Returning to the elevator, Feng Bujua first opened his friend list, but most of the names showed that they were in-game. If he waited any longer, he would not be able to find them, so he had no choice but to queue alone. After thinking about it for a few seconds, he clicked open the mode selection menu and selected Team Survival mode. Since he had just played solo survival mode that afternoon, and the previous scenario had been a super difficult killing game, he only wanted to join a team with more players to be a bystander. Currently, Feng Bujua's character data was as follows. Title: Pioneer of Darkness, EXP, 258500280000 SP, 14,400 game coins, 1365000. Mastery: General Ability C, Workmanship D, Sleuthing D, Fighting C, Marksmanship D, Medic E, Sorcery C, Summoning F. Inventory 1015, Mario's Wrench, Flashlight, Stool of the 18 Bronze Statues, Number 5, SCP-500-1020, Anti-Gravity Gun, Miss Moxie's Bad Temper, Belle of Jean Gang, Persephone's Vacuum Cleaner, Life Points Recovery Potions, MX3, Endless Grenade Box Equipment, Jazz Shoes, Spiderweb Gloves, Death Poker, Sorcery Weapon, Echo Armor, Goblin's Mask, Artemis Embrace Space 410. Puzzle Card, Monkey, Puzzle Card, Sunglasses, Puzzle Card, Strawberry, Puzzle Card, Leather Jacket Skills. Not So Hasty Repair, Body Enhancement Technique, Ice Alchemist's Persistence. War Demon Descent. With these stats, he could join any team and be the main player. As long as he could clear the scenario, even if he sacrificed himself in the process, he would gain quite a bit of EXP, and leveling up was a piece of cake. Feng Bujua, level 28 inch. Please select the game mode that you wish to join. You have selected Team Survival Mode, Normal. Please confirm. Confirmed. The number of team members has been randomized. 4. You have joined the queue. Currently searching for other players or teams that are ready. Matching complete. Coordinating nerve connection. Generating scenario. Downloading, please wait a moment. After the series of announcements, the iconic dialogue of the game began again. Welcome to Thriller Paradise. This time, it sounded like the voice of a literary youth. The tone was calm, and the narration was steady. At the same time, Fong Bujue's vision turned dark. It looked like this time, they were using the sudden teleportation method. Download complete. You are currently in Team Survival Mode, Normal. A scenario introduction is provided in this mode, and there is a chance of triggering hidden side quests and special world building. Reward for clearing the scenario: randomly draw a learnable skill card. Playing the scenario introduction soon. The game will start after that. The introductory cinematic started, and the scene was rather mundane. It was dusk in a bustling city. The streets were filled with traffic, and people walked back and forth. Everything looked normal, and the narration did not start for a long time. The camera moved slowly in the air like it was shooting some kind of sightseeing documentary about the city. Such a normal opening, but it makes me feel strangely unsettled. Fong Bujue thought to himself. 10 seconds later, the camera stopped at a building about 20 stories tall. Then, the camera moved closer to the building at a fixed angle. The sky darkened, and the pedestrians and cars in his sight dwindled. Chapter 301. The opening cinematic ended inexplicably. There was not even half a word of warning. Fong Bujue immediately regained the ability to move, and the first thing he did was naturally to observe the situation around him. At this time, the other 3 players had appeared on both sides of Fong Bujue, 1 on the left, 2 on the right, the 4 of them facing the same direction, standing in a row. The 3 of them were all men, and they were all in their 20s. The distance between the 4 players was almost the same, and no one was close to each other. It looked like the 4 of them had all queued in. About 10 meters in front of them was the building in the cinematic earlier. Main quest has been triggered. The system notification came without warning. In the absence of a plot introduction, the quest was refreshed immediately. Fong Bujue opened the menu and saw the quest tab. All surviving players enter the detective club. I didn't expect to meet a superstar player just by queuing up, the player standing on the left of the 4 suddenly said. Fong Bujue heard that and looked over. The person who spoke had the ID of Autumn Wind, level 28, and the title of both intelligence and courage. He was about 1.7 meters tall, and he was on the thin side. He had short black hair, and he could be considered handsome. He was wearing a dark outfit, and the badge on his chest showed that his guild was called Mountain River. After Autumn Wind said that, the player on the right side of Fong Bujue immediately said, "Haha, what superstar player? It's just a title." On the other hand, the Autumn Wind Ru of Shanha is very well known. Fong Bujue looked at this person again. This person's ID was Hong Hu, 2 words were enough to explain a lot, level 29, and the title of strategist. He was slightly taller than Autumn Wind, and he was also on the thin side. He had silver-white hair, and he wore a pair of glasses, clothing. He looked gentle. He was wearing a white magical outfit, and he looked like a medieval mage. There was no badge on his outfit, which meant that he was a solo player without a guild. Hong Hu had just finished when the person on the right said, "Brother Hong Hu, you're too humble. Who in the professional circle doesn't know the title of strategist Hong Hu?" Fong Bujue turned to look at that person. This time, the person who spoke was called Weighty Words, level 28, and the title of steady strategist. He was half a head taller than Brother Ju, and he was slightly more stocky than the other 2. He had a crew cut, and he was the kind of person who would not be found in a crowd. In terms of attire, he was wearing a dark blue military uniform. It was probably the uniform of his guild, and his guild badge had the words Heaven and Earth written on it. When I said star player, I wasn't just referring to Hong Hu. Autumn Wind continued, I've also heard of Brother Strategist's name. Humph. The three of them smiled knowingly. The pleasure of flattering each other was indescribable. This was the kind of feeling that those who came out to play wanted. Fong Bujua listened to their conversation and looked left and right. He felt like a web novelist who had accidentally stumbled into a writers' association meeting. He wanted to talk, but he didn't know where to start. Fong Bujua had some impression of Mountain River and Heaven and Earth. Both of them were in the top 10 of the overall strength ranking. However, he had never seen the names of the three players in front of him before. After all, Fong Bujua was not part of the professional gaming circle. Even though he had heard of some big names, the number of people he knew was still limited. For example, those fake football fans, if you mention Messi, Ronaldo, and Robin van Persie, they would know them, but if you mentioned a name like Alba, the first thing that popped up in their minds would be a Hollywood actress and not a Spanish fullback. Back to the main topic, the three that Fong Bujua had met were all professional gamers, and they were indeed famous players. However, in Thriller Paradise, they were not on the level and combat ranking. The most famous of them all was Hong Hu, who was known as the Strategist. This nickname did not come about after playing Thriller Paradise. Years ago, Hong Hu had already established his standing in the game. In many RTS, turn-based strategy, and virtual epic strategy games, he was one of the top players. Furthermore, Hong Hu was an independent professional gamer. He did not have the support of a gaming studio, and he relied on his own ability to survive. According to rumors, he came from a normal family when he was young, but when he was 18, he used the money he earned from gaming to escape poverty. Including the Shadow King, almost every professional gamer who worked with their own identity did not know Hong Hu's name. In fact, many of them joined the industry because of his story. On the other hand, Autumn Wind was the brains of Mountain River, and he was good friends with the boss of the gaming studio. Normally, he had other duties at the company, so he would not participate in games directly. However, as long as he participated in a game, he would win the championship without exception. Autumn Wind was best at war-themed strategy games, especially modern warfare. He had once written a famous post on a gaming forum about the Three Kingdoms. As a modern person, do we still need to use the strategic thinking of the medieval period to play war games? The debate and argument caused by that post had not stopped. Actually, what Autumn Wind was trying to explain was a simple truth. The concept of war would change with the times. Some people thought that the generals from World War I or even the Liberation War were not as good as the military strategists from the Eastern Han Dynasty, and that was nonsense. The third-person, weighty words also had a great background. He was a rare professional gamer with a high education. As the professional system became more and more mature, players became a profession similar to athletes. Due to the special nature of the industry, the age of players was generally young, usually between 14 and 18 years old, with the youngest being 12 years old. Therefore, professional gamers were generally junior high or high school. He was an international student from a famous overseas university. During his study in Europe, he also won the Intercontinental Magic Card Tournament. In terms of age, Weighty Words was 25 years old this year, a few years older than the other two. However, in terms of professional gaming experience, he was still a junior who had only been in the industry for 2 years. However, this junior relied on a few very important game championships to quickly make a name for himself in the industry and became a well-known strategic player. In short, these people were all experts. After the three of them greeted each other, there was a short silence. Then, they turned to look at Fong Bujua at the same time. I am just a person, no one. You don't have to pay too much attention to me. Fong Bujua narrowed his eyes and said. Although he had no idea who these three people were, listening to their conversation, he felt that they were very powerful. Therefore, another period of silence began. After a few seconds, Weighty Words spoke first. This. Brother Feng, there is no need to be so humble. Since we are a team, everyone can play a role. Ambitionist pushed on his glasses and cut in. Brother Feng, do you mind if I ask, are you the kind of player who uses brute force or is more of a puzzle solver? He paused. Because your title is a bit ambiguous, I wish to confirm it. I am a casual player, Feng Bujua replied. That means I am very weak at fighting and quite average at solving puzzles. This was obviously bullshit. Of course, Feng Bujua had no grudge with these people, and there was no conflict of interest. Naturally, he did not say this to pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger. In fact, after he found out about these people's titles, he was overjoyed. The teams that he had met in the past basically relied on Feng Bujua to come up with strategies and strategies. This time, it was rare to meet 3 players who were good at strategizing, the kind that could be seen from their titles, and they all looked like they were enjoying themselves. Brother Ju, this nameless character, could use this as an excuse. Occasionally, he would let someone else command him while he himself could relax and do nothing. Is that so? That is strange. Hong Hu scratched his chin and said in thought. Is there a problem? Chiu Fengse asked as she tried to figure out what the man meant by strange. There is no introduction to this scenario, it just gave us a mission, Hong Hu replied. It has a sense of, everything will be solved by you. Then, the focus of his eyes changed. He was probably looking at the game menu. And the detective club that the mission refers to seems to be hinting at something. So that is why. Weighty words said. Chiu Fengse, Hong Hu, and I are all players who are good at strategizing. If the setting of this scenario is to clear the scenario purely through solving puzzles, then the 4 of us should be good at strategizing. At this point, the 3 of them turned to look at Feng Bujua. Fine, if I have to choose compared to fighting, I am more of a puzzle solver, Feng Bujua said awkwardly. Actually, it was fine if he did not admit it, but he was afraid that the wrong information would affect his teammates' judgment of the whole scenario, so he admitted it. However, he did not forget to add, but don't place too much hope on me. At most, I am just a normal person. The real problem will depend on the 3 of you. Haha. Brother Feng, you are too kind, Chiu Fengse said. Chiu Fengse said. For puzzle solving, there is no harm in having one more person. After all, it is a win-win situation. Even so, the 3 of them did not think much of Feng Bujua. The 3 of them were thinking, if this is a scenario that is purely about solving puzzles, I will be able to solve it alone, and you will just have to watch my performance. It was not that they were arrogant because this group of strategists had always been like that. As smart people who could get things right 9 out of 10 times, when it came to critical moments, they only trusted themselves the most in the depths of their hearts. Oh right, it should be clarified here that Feng Bujua was not part of that group. He was purely arrogant and narcissistic, and there was no saving him. A scenario designed for 4 players who are good at solving puzzles. Hong Hu said, and his lips curved upward. Interesting. Ever since we entered the scenario, the information that we can obtain has been minimized, Weighty words said. I wonder what kind of problem we will face next. Chiu Fengse used a similar, serious, and Chunibu tone to say, let's use my strategy to solve all of them. In the end, Feng Bujua added weakly from behind them, I will give you my moral support. Chapter 302. The 4 greeted each other and were about to discuss the next step of the plan when Weighty Words' expression shifted. Guys, everything in my inventory has turned gray. Is that the same for you guys? With his reminder, the other 3 players also opened the game menu and checked their inventory. Same for me. Everything is gray and I can't take anything out, Autumn Breeze added. Same, Feng Bujua added. This is a restriction given to us by the scenario, right? Hong Hu said directly. He paused. But there is no hint for this? Weighty Words was a cautious strategist. His mind might not be as fast as his teammates, but he was very thorough and would always think before he acted. After hearing what Hong Hu said, he realized another problem. Then, what if there are other restrictions? Like time, Autumn Breeze said. Chiu Fengsa continued. Assuming this scenario only updates the quest and doesn't give us any other hints, we have to explore all the settings and rules on our own. In that case, the biggest factor that will cause us to be wiped out will be time. Hong Hu nodded. That is indeed a possibility. What if there is a time limit hidden in this scenario and we don't know about it and are still slowly exploring it? Time limit. We should be able to find the relevant hint soon, right? Feng Bujue interrupted in a matter-of-fact tone. That's right. Hong Hu continued Brother Ju's words. There is no such thing as a rule that cannot be deciphered. If there is a time limit, there will be a plot or hint, and it will appear early in the scenario and only appear when we are running out of time. If there is no hint, then that is too. Before he finished, he stopped himself. Hong Hu turned around, pushed on his glasses, and looked at Feng Bujue with suspicion. Autumn Breeze and Weighty Words hesitated before understanding something. They both moved their eyes to Feng Bujue. What? Feng Bujue immediately played dumb. Did I say something wrong? Actually, I thought that, with the few of you here, all the restrictions and puzzles would be solved very quickly. That's why I said it casually. Hong Hu laughed dryly and said, No, you're right. You're quite talented in solving puzzles, hee. In fact, he was thinking, TSK? So that's what you meant. You said it so casually and optimistically, but you sounded so calm and confident. I thought you guessed it in an instant and scared me. Chiu Feng and Weighty Words shrugged, and they did not say anything. On the other hand, Feng Bujue secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He thought to himself, I accidentally blurted out the conclusion that popped up in my mind. Fortunately, I didn't say much, so I managed to get away with it. He couldn't go on like this. This wasn't the attitude he should have as a bystander. From now on, I'd better stop thinking and think about something else. By the way, Passing Rain's condition has improved. A beauty in a fever. Hey, why is this guy suddenly showing such a perverted expression? Autumn Breeze whispered to Weighty Words beside him. He was just praised by Hong Hu. Is there a need for such a reaction? Weighty Words swallowed. Could he be a beep? That word is quite insulting. You'd have to say gay. Autumn Breeze lowered his voice even further. Hey, didn't you understand it even though it was blocked? Weighty Words whispered. Hong Hu looked at Feng Bujue's saliva dripping from his lips and the goofy smile on his face, and he was even more convinced that this was a player who was trying to suck up to someone powerful. The title Vanguard of Darkness probably referred to the fact that he often joined the side of the antagonist in some of the previous scenarios or was used to using stealth skills. But, come to think of it, Hong Hu mumbled to himself. Have Autumn Breeze and Weighty Words known each other before this? Based on their conversation, it doesn't sound like that. How did they get together so quickly to whisper to each other? Hey, was that the word gay earlier? Could these two be love at first sight? In just a few minutes, this bunch of smart people with their own agenda had already started to have many unexplainable misunderstandings. In any case, from the only hint we have, which is the introductory cinematic, the place called Detective Club is most likely inside this building. Hong Hu raised his voice to say, if the Detective Club refers to this whole building, then the scenario is too simple. There is no way that one will clear the scenario just by walking through the door. Chiu Feng added. Weighty Words added, then, it should be referring to one of the rooms inside this building. The three gave a long hum in unison, and their posture mimicked Shinichi's. Right then, Feng Bujue suddenly took out a magazine from his shirt pocket and said, items that are placed outside the inventory can still be used. Once he said that, Autumn Breeze seemed to be reminded of something. He also took out something from his shirt pocket. It was a small pack of chocolates. He tried it several times before saying, "But items outside the inventory cannot be placed inside the inventory." "So, basically, the inventory is sealed," Hong-Hu said. "Then, all the items that we find can only be held in our hands or placed inside our shirt pockets," Weighty Words said. "Since we have understood this rule, there is a problem. Should we enter the building directly or explore the surrounding map first?" Autumn Breeze said. "Ignoring the time limit, if we choose to explore the city, even if we find something valuable, there will be a limit to how much we can take with us. For example, larger standard weapons or restricted knives, it is not appropriate to walk through the city with them. Furthermore, limited inventory means that if a battle is triggered, we will have to fight with our bare hands," Weighty Words added. "Even though I can fight, that is not my forte." Hong-Hu nodded slightly and said, "You have a point, but I think we should at least observe the surroundings first. First, we don't know whether we will be able to leave this building after we enter. It is quite common for the entrance to be automatically sealed. Second, our starting point after entering the scenario is the entrance of this building and not inside the building. This means that there is something outside the building that we can explore, or else the system wouldn't have done this." "Humph. This strategist sure is something," Autumn Breeze said. "Even if the system doesn't give us any hint, we can still make a reasonable deduction based on the limited information that we have." Autumn Breeze and Weighty Words agreed with Hong-Hu's suggestion, so naturally, Feng Bujue followed. The four of them came to an agreement. They would split up to explore the half-a-kilometer radius around the building to get a general idea of the scenario. This general idea included a lot of information like what era, what country, what city this was, whether it was based on real life or not, whether the plot was adapted from other works or was it created on the spot. Were there zombies in the city? Are there any aliens around? Is it haunted? Were there any superheroes? These were all things that could be investigated. They could pick up an old newspaper or a working public phone, and many things could be confirmed. For these players, completing the most basic level of intelligence gathering was a walk in the park. Unfortunately, in this scenario, they did not have the chance to show off this skill. 10 minutes later, the four of them gathered at the entrance of the building from 4 different directions. 3 of them did not look so happy. From the newspaper and the signs of the shops, the language used here is German, but the system did not give us any translation, Autumn Breeze said. There are not that many people on the street, and they are all Caucasians. I tried to talk to them in Chinese, but they pretended not to hear me, Weighty Words said. I did not dare use violence to stop them. After all, it might attract the attention of the police, and that would be bad for us. From the clothes of the people, the appearance of the public facilities, and the cars on the road, this should be the beginning of the 21st century. The location is hard to say, and there are many German speakers. Hong-Hu said. Due to the language barrier and the lack of currency here, without breaking the law or using violence, it is hard to know too much. Feng Bujue was the last to speak. I borrowed some change and his phone from a young man in his 20s. I tried 110, 119, 120, 114, 10086, and many other numbers, but none of them connected. He paused. Then I used the change to buy some snacks from the convenience store. He patted his bulging pocket. If you want to eat, hey! That is not the point. Autumn Breeze interrupted him. Since you know German, you should have asked him for some useful information, like the specific year and location of this scenario, and whether he has heard of the detective club or not. Who said I know German? Feng Bujue said. Weighty Words said. Then how did you borrow? Wait a minute. He seemed to understand. Don't tell me. I stopped the young man and tried to communicate with him in Chinese and English, but I failed. Feng Bujue explained calmly. Therefore, I picked up a brick and pulled on his collar to say 2 sentences in German. They were, infuriate me, and those who stand in our way are all trash. Then he gave me his phone and wallet. God! Hong Hu held his face with one hand and shook his head. Autumn Breeze's lips twitched. Isn't that robbery? Sigh. Brick is the international language. Weighty words sighed. Hong Hu added, we'd better go into the building. If the police arrive, things will get worse. Feng Bujue shrugged expressionlessly. Okay. Chapter 303. The four of them entered through the main entrance of the building. The first floor was a very spacious space. The floor was paved with marble tiles, and some supporting pillars were arranged in a regular pattern around the floor. Many round lamps embedded in the ceiling lit up the entire lobby. Looking around, other than the four walls and pillars, there was nothing else on the first floor. Opposite the door, in the middle of the furthest wall, there was a white door. Since the walls were all gray, this spot of white looked very conspicuous. There was no hint after we entered, Chiu Feng said. At least we can confirm that the detective club is not referring to this whole building, Weighty Words said. Hong Hu looked around. Then, it should be somewhere in this building, Feng Bujue then interrupted. Is it possible that the detective club is not even inside this building, but somewhere else? Hong Hu thought about it and replied, That is indeed possible, but Weighty Words added, but so far, the introductory cinematic is our only clue. Since the only clue points to this building, there has to be something here that can push the scenario forward. Chiu Feng added, even if the detective club is really not here, there should be some hint related to the quest in this building. Or else, wouldn't that mean the system is purposely misleading us? In any case, since I started playing this game, I have not come across or heard of a situation where the system purposely led the players to a meaningless location to make them waste their time and energy. So that's why. Feng Bujue acted like he was enlightened, but internally, he thought, not bad, their analytical skills are quite reliable, and they are quite confident. But was it really a coincidence that four puzzle-solving players of a certain standard were gathered together? If it is, then what kind of scenario will the system generate to match the difficulty of the player's ability? Suddenly, a strange sound came from behind the four. They turned around at the same time and realized that the door had been sealed by a blue wall of light. So, the exit has been sealed, Hong Hu said. Chiu Feng scoffed. It won't affect the situation that much. He wasn't wrong. The three strategists all had calm expressions on their faces. They didn't feel the slightest bit of panic because their path of retreat was suddenly sealed. Weighty Words walked several meters closer to look at the wall of light. This should not be a physically generated laser. He pointed at the four edges of the wall of light. There is no device that can generate laser at all. Hong Hu scratched his chin. A wall of light that appears out of thin air and attaches itself to a specific area. His eyes under the glasses glowed. A supernatural barrier. I wonder if it is magic or... Whoosh! A glowing poker card suddenly flew into everyone's line of sight and hit the light wall. The death poker seemed to have been swallowed, disappearing the moment it touched the surface of the light wall. After seeing this, everyone's eyes on the wall of the man who threw the card, the wall of light, the wall of light. To be able to swallow a poker card made from spiritual energy, it is indeed a non-physical energy. Feng Bujue said, if this is a laser, when my poker card hits it, it will either explode, bounce, or cut. It will not be swallowed like this. I say. Weighty Words looked at Feng Bujue like he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Before doing something that might be dangerous, can't you ask for everyone's opinion first? What if this wall of light is set to trigger some kind of destructive mechanism after being attacked or reflect the attack? Then we will all be in trouble, Chiu Feng said. Sorry. Feng Bujue said. Because I heard you guys say that this is not a physical laser, I wanted to test it out. Furthermore, the power of my poker cards is limited. Is that a sorcery weapon? Hong Hu did not dwell on what happened earlier but looked at the death poker in Feng Bujue's hand with a serious expression. Feng Bujue was startled before he replied, "Yes, it is a sorcery weapon." When Qiu Feng and weighty words heard that, their expressions shifted slightly. "Interesting," Hong Hu said. "You said earlier that you are more interested in puzzle solving, but you have already obtained a sorcery weapon in combat." Facing this obvious test, Feng Bujue's face did not betray anything. His expression was very natural. It did not freeze, and it did not change. He was just reacting normally to Hong Hu's question and replied with a smile, "Oh, about that, I was just lucky." Ha ha ha. It sounded like a perfunctory answer, but it was actually the most logical answer. The acquisition of a sorcery weapon was dependent on luck. Many players with strong combat ability did not manage to get one. Therefore, there was no conflict between possessing a sorcery weapon and being a puzzle-solving player. At that moment, if Feng Bujue gave some kind of explanation for his possession of a sorcery weapon, it would be suspicious. Brother Ju understood it very well. The matter-of-fact tone, the smug laughter, and the meaningless answer, the combination of these three was the reaction that a normal person would have. As for the other answers, most of them had something up their sleeve. Hong Hu paused for 2 seconds before saying, "Oh, that is a good thing. Now that we can't use the items in our inventory, it will be more difficult for us in combat. If you have a sorcery weapon, then it will be much safer." After saying that, he quickly changed the topic. "Then, since the way back has been sealed, we can only explore further, right? The appearance of the light wall basically proves that we are on the right path," Qiu Feng said. "If the detective club is inside this building, then there is indeed no need for us to leave." Weighty words said, "Let's explore the first floor in detail. Other than that white door, we can see if there are any other hidden entrances." Hong Hu nodded. "When you explore, please pay attention to the location of the pillars, the texture on the marble tiles, and the length, width, and height of this floor. Even though it might not be useful information, it is not wrong to collect it." "Understood. Understood." Haha. After the discussion, the four split up again and started to explore the surrounding environment. But they soon noticed that there was indeed nothing much to see on this floor. Therefore, after about 7 or 8 minutes, the four of them gathered in front of the white door. Chapter 304. The four shared a look, and it was Autumn Gale who said, "Let me open it." Then, he walked forward and grabbed the doorknob. "Wait a minute." Feng Bujue stopped him. "Aren't you afraid of being killed when you open the door?" "But someone has to open the door," Qiu Feng replied. "Under the premise that there is no hint, if the system sets a fatal trap behind the door of the only path, it will be a forced action to reduce the number of players. It doesn't make sense." "Oh." Feng Bujue nodded as he took a step back. "Then, I hope you won't mind if I take a step back and watch from afar." Okay," Autumn Gale replied. After he said that, he shared a look with Hong Hu and Weighty Word. The three shrugged and did not know whether to laugh or cry. At that moment, the three of them were thinking, this Feng Bujue is crazy. Earlier, he did all kinds of reckless actions, and now he's trying to correct them. Actually, it was because they did not know Feng Bujue well enough. Who was Brother Ju? In the solo scenario, he was careful when he opened the door. Before he entered the room, he did not forget to use a rod to test for trap. In a situation like this, you want him to watch you open the door from such a close distance? If Feng Bujue had something to say, it would be, "It's fine if you die, but don't splash me with your blood." In his eyes, there was a strung grenade behind every door, and a Galen crouched in every bush. So, unless it was absolutely necessary, he would not take the risk. Autumn Gale did not hesitate for long and ignored Feng Bujue, who had retreated 10 meters away. He adjusted his breathing, turned the doorknob, and pushed the door open. Behind the door was a rather large space. The space was square in shape and it was about 20 meters long. And the only exit was this white door. The square room was not as big as the lobby outside, but the ceiling was obviously higher. The ceiling in the lobby was less than 5 meters high. The whole room was empty except for a strange object on the ground in the middle of the room. The shape of this object was difficult to describe. It should be considered a polyhedron that was close to a sphere, and its volume was slightly larger than a basketball. After opening the door, the people in front of the door had no intention of stepping into the room. They were all smarter than monkeys. When they saw this kind of strange setting, they would definitely take a look first. I thought there would be a staircase or elevator behind the door, Weighty Words said. I find it strange too. Hong Hu looked confused as he said, We've already checked, and the only passageway on the first floor is through this door. However, there is no passageway through the door, and it's in another sealed area. Chiu Feng continued, Humph, there are only two possibilities. First, this square room is the so-called detective club. We only need to step into it to complete the mission. He paused for a moment and pointed at the object in the room. The second one is that thing inside. It can help us leave this place. Is it a device to activate some kind of mechanism or a teleportation device? Weighty Words followed his train of thought. Chiu Feng replied, Oh? Do you think it's definitely the second scenario? Weighty Words was startled. At least I don't think this room is like a club. It doesn't even have a window. When the door is closed, it should be dark inside, and the ventilation should be a problem. That's hard to say. The so-called detective club might not be a normal club. If the system is willing, it can name a public toilet like that, Chiu Feng said. Chiu Feng said. Also, the mission all surviving players enter the detective club might just be the first step in a series of missions. The system did not say that completing this step will clear the scenario. Maybe the mission is to get all the living players to enter this room. You have a point. After all, that supernatural setting has already appeared. Weighty Words turned back to look at the wall of light at the door. Perhaps after we enter, the space inside will change. For the sake of security, I think we should have someone go in first to check what the thing inside the room is. Hong Hu suggested. Then he added, after saying something like that, it does not sound right to have someone else go in, so I'll volunteer myself. At that moment, Feng Bujue suddenly screamed and interrupted Hong Hu. Chiu Feng, Weighty Words, and Hong Hu were spooked by this sudden scream, and their terror points jumped slightly. Ever since the door was opened, Feng Bujue had sunk into silence. He used a very strange gaze to stare at the objects inside the room from afar. At that moment, for some reason, he suddenly screamed and quickly retreated. Don't go in. Stay away from that thing. Feng Bujue shouted. Come to me. Hong Hu's group did not think too much about it. Seeing the seriousness on Feng Bujue's face, he did not look like he was joking, so they moved quickly and retreated to Feng Bujue's side. Several seconds later, the four retreated until they were about 20 meters away from the door. Hong Hu asked, What's wrong with you this time? Feng Bujue said, I just saved your life. Hong Hu's tone was 70% confused and 30% pained. You should be asking, what do you mean by that? Feng Bujue said. Hong Hu thought it was funny. He scoffed and said with a bitter smile, Fine. What do you mean by that? I think it's better if you don't know, Feng Bujue replied. I say, Brother Feng. At this moment, Weighty Words said earnestly, seriously, Can you not cause trouble? I'm not kidding. Feng Bujue replied seriously. I recognize the thing in the room and know what it is. But if I tell you the information about this thing, it will be very dangerous for you to get close to it again. He spoke quickly, and there was a confidence and reliability in his tone. If we wish to continue this scenario, we have to borrow the power of this thing. And to do that, we have to cooperate with each other. His eyes scanned the three doubtful faces and continued. The specialty of this thing is that those who do not know its specialty will be relatively safe when they come into contact with it. But within a certain range, there is someone who knows its specialty, and everything that goes against its law will be destroyed. Feng Bujue paused for a few seconds to give his teammates some time to digest this information. I am the person who knows its specialty. He turned to look at Hong Hu. And based on the information that I have, Hong Hu, you have violated its law. He slowed down. Thankfully, when you opened the door, I was far enough away from that thing, or else when I recognized it, Hong Hu would be dead. Chapter 305. Actually, at this moment, when we were talking, I could not help but connect the dots. Every single one of us has something that goes against the law of nature. In other words, Feng Bujue sighed. Now, once I enter the effective range of that thing, I will be wiped out due to one of my unique traits. His eyes scanned the three before him. But the three of you still do not know the law of this thing. As long as you maintain this state, you will be able to get close to it. So, wait a minute. Hong, who had been following Feng Bujue's train of thought. Hearing this, he said, based on what you said, to make this thing take effect, we need someone who knows its characteristic and is standing within its effective range. He paused. But currently, the only person who knows its characteristic, which is you, will die once you step into its effective range. Does that mean you will have to sacrifice yourself to trigger it? Qiu Feng asked. Other than that, you said that every single one of us has something that goes against the law of this object, weighty words added. That means, no one will be able to survive to trigger this thing. Because when we do not know its characteristic, we will not be able to trigger its effect, and once we do, we will end up in the same situation as you. Yes, that is the key. I have a way to make the object take effect as long as all of us are alive, Feng Bujue replied. The three teammates did not show too much shock or confusion on their faces. There was only a focused expression. Feng Bujue was satisfied with their reaction. It was so easy to communicate with smart people. He did not need to explain too much, and they would trust him and understand him. First, I need one of you to pick up the object and place it at a specific location. During this process, try to empty your mind and not think too much. Feng Bujue started to explain his strategy. After the object is placed in place, the person will listen to my order and walk to the edge of the object's effective range. At that time, I will say something to him. The content of the sentence will be the description of an objective fact. He paused for half a second before continuing. If nothing goes wrong, the moment you finish your sentence, the object will take effect. And in these few seconds, the perpetrator probably didn't have time to realize what would cause him to be obliterated. Understood. Hong Hu continued, as long as the person immediately escapes the effective range of that thing after hearing it. Then, the effect of the object will only act on the information object you described, and will not obliterate the actor. By the time the person realizes that they are in conflict with the item, they will have already left its range, and will be safe. Qiu Feng said thoughtfully, So, the object is triggered by the cognition of the observers within a certain range. Weighty words did not give his opinion. He was silent for a few seconds before he said something else. Brother Feng, you were able to come up with such a strategy in such a short amount of time, and you call yourself a puzzle-solving expert? I was just being polite. Feng Bujue also knew that since things had reached this stage, it was impossible for him to continue acting dumb. You're being too humble. Hong Hu pushed on his glasses. Of the four of us, only you know the characteristic of that object, and this characteristic cannot be revealed to others. In other words, to solve this puzzle without any casualties, you will have to come up with the plan alone. The scenario of Thriller Paradise is randomly generated based on the data of all the players in the team. The knowledge, power, skill, equipment, and so on of the four of us are all within the range of consideration. Therefore, your ability to come up with a strategy has been acknowledged by the system. At least, the photon computer believes that you have more than a 50% chance of solving this puzzle alone. Humph. I'm guessing that Brother Feng originally wanted to pretend to be ignorant and follow behind us, the so-called big shots. Chiu Feng pointed out Brother Ju's intention sharply. But after he saw that thing, he had to join the puzzle solving. Ah, I suppose so. Feng Bujue admitted. Ha ha. At the end of the day, this is actually our problem. Weighty Words laughed and used his hand to scratch his crew cut. From the beginning, the three of us naturally underestimated Brother Feng, and the reason was that the ID Feng Bujue was not that famous. He looked at Hong Hu and Chiu Feng. If I was in Brother Feng's shoes, I would have reacted the same way. I can't possibly boast about how powerful I am to three people who don't know me. You're right, Hong Hu agreed. Chiu Feng said, then let's not dwell on this problem anymore. How about we discuss who is going to move the stuff? Feng Bujue then said, Weighty Words, Chiu Feng, which of you is more familiar with mathematics? Mathematics? I'm not bad, Weighty Words said. SOSO, Chiu Feng added. I've returned the stuff from high school to high school, so I'm probably at middle school level now. Then, it's you, Feng Bujue said. Huh. Chiu Feng was startled. Why? What do you mean why? I couldn't explain it before, so what's there to ask? Feng Bujue raised his arm to point at the room. He mimicked a teenager's voice and yelled with passion, It's you! Go! Pikachu! After hearing Feng Bujue's ridiculous joke, even Weighty Words and Hong Hu felt embarrassed, much less Chiu Feng himself. I can't believe I'm talking to an adult. Chiu Feng put on an annoyed face and complained. Moral beast super evolved, moral beast super evolved, moral beast super evolved, Feng Bujue drawled. Are you done? Chiu Feng roared with both shame and anger. I'm distracting you. Feng Bujue said seriously. This will increase your safety during the operation. You only need to wait for me to move the stuff out of the door and tell me where to put it. There's no need to waste time. Fine. Even though Feng Bujue's action was shameful, it was effective. After ending this rather awkward conversation, Chiu Feng's mind really went blank. Item number. SCP-233 Item Safety Level. Key to Special Containment Measure. SCP-233 has to be stored in a 23 by 23 by 23 cubic containment area lined with concrete. As long as it's 23 by 23 by 23, it doesn't matter what the unit length is. A 23-meter safety zone has been established around the object. No D-grade personnel below the age of 23 are allowed to cross the zone. For the sake of research, it is recommended to use D-grade personnel whose birthday is on the 23rd of X month. No firearms are allowed inside the zone unless they are using 23 caliber special ammunition. The worker's shift has to be scheduled at 2300 hours on the hour, and the final shift has to be accurate to 23:23 Greenwich Mean Time. Deleted ammunition must not be used near the project. D-grade personnel born in the month of deleted, or the deleted day of a certain month, the 10th deleted day, or the 20th deleted day of a certain month are not allowed to come into contact with the project. Personnel working in the containment facility should be specially reminded to be extra vigilant against deleted at every hour, especially at the deleted point. This is the period when the SCP is most active. For the best reason, all personnel should be evacuated 23 meters away from the SCP during this period. Description: SCP-233 is a 23-sided object. Each side is an equilateral rectangle with a straight line inside. Due to this object's strange spatial properties, it cannot be accurately constructed, and it cannot be replicated in 3D or 2D form. SCP-233 has the ability to change the mathematical rules of nearby areas. It can cause the surrounding calculations to be completely wrong, unless the 23rd system is used. However, calculators using the 23rd system can benefit from this SCP and can calculate at 23 times the normal speed. The proposal to destroy this SCP has been postponed because there is a possibility of it being incorporated into a data deleted. Not to mention the difficulty of converting binary to the 23rd system, this device has already shown its value to the organization. Unfortunately, the appearance of the number deleted in the SCP-233's area of effect will cause it to display an extremely violent effect. Everything affected by this effect will be rapidly chemically disintegrated, because the atoms that make up this substance will instantly collapse in 0.23 seconds. It is worth mentioning that based on past experience, SCP-233 does not seem to be triggered by the physical properties of nearby objects, but by the perception of surrounding observers. For example, it is safe to hang SCP-233 on a 274-meter-long pole, as long as no observer in the danger zone knows that the pole is actually deleted feet long. The reason for this effect is unknown, but it may be related to the observer effect in classical quantum physics. Feng Bujue's knowledge of the SCP series allowed him to recognize this 23-sided object. He also knew that 274 meters was about 9 feet long. In other words, this SCP targeted the number 9. As long as someone who knew its characteristics entered the 23-meter range of SCP-233, then, in that area, everything related to 9 in that person's perception will be erased. When Feng Bujue shouted and retreated, he already noticed a problem. Feng and Feng both had 9 strokes, so there is no need to talk about that. The other 3, Autumn Breezes, Autumn, and Weighty Words, You, all had 9 strokes. Hong, whose connection to 9 was even more obvious, he was level 29. No matter which of the 3 teammates moved the item, as long as they heard his words, even if they did not know the characteristics of SCP-233, they would quickly understand that the problem was with the number 9. Then, the faster the action person connected themselves to 9, the faster they would be erased. If this was a scam team, then it would be better to find someone who was slower to act as the action person. But the 4 people in front of him were the type that had a particularly fast brain. Once information entered their brain, they would instinctively make deductions. Therefore, Feng Bujue decided to let Autumn Breeze, who was relatively weak in mathematics, go and try his best to use language to disrupt the other party's thoughts. The action method he came up with was to minimize the amount of time his teammates had to think and the amount of information they had to know. This puzzle-solving strategy did not seem complicated, but in reality, it fully demonstrated Feng Bujue's strength. Even his seemingly nonsensical actions were actually meaningful. All the details were flawless. Where do we put it? At this time, Autumn Breeze walked out from the white door and asked loudly. Feng Bujue had retreated far enough. Even if the item was moved out, he was standing 23 meters away. Over there. When he shouted, Brother Ju used his finger to point. Just place it between the 2 pillars that are leaning against the wall. Chiu Feng responded after hearing that. He carried the 23 facets and walked all the way to that place. This SCP was not too heavy. For a player with enhanced physique, it was easy to move. About 10 seconds later, Autumn Breeze placed the item in place. Is it okay to put it here? Okay, Feng Bujue replied. Now walk toward me. There's no need to go too fast. Stop when I tell you to stop. Autumn Breeze did as he was told. Feng Bujue estimated that the other party had walked about 20 meters. He shouted, Stop. Then he said, Okay, I'm going to say that message. I'll say it faster. After that, I will shout run again. At that time, you should run to our side as fast as you can. Just keep thinking about what I said in your mind. Chapter 306. Feng Bujue paused for a few seconds before continuing. The distance between the two pillars on both sides of the object is exactly 9 meters. Almost as soon as the word meter left his lips, he added, "Run." Just as he said that, when Qiu Feng took his first step, the sound of the building crumbling came from behind him. This meant that at that moment, Qiu Feng's cognition had activated SCP-233. The loud noise behind him did not interfere with Qiu Feng's actions. He rushed all the way to the side of his 3 teammates before stopping. Then, he turned his head to observe the changes over there. SCP-233 only needed 0.23 seconds to destroy a physical object, and the process was silent. Therefore, when the sound of crumbling came, the destruction process was already over. The sound that Qiu Feng heard was the follow-up, the sound of the building materials falling from the ceiling. From Feng Bujue, weighty words, and Hong Hu's perspective, they could see that almost at the same time that Feng Bujue shouted, "Run!" the 2 pillars themselves and the wall between them disintegrated. The part of the ceiling and the floor that was parallel to the wall disappeared as well. Some of the concrete that fell from the second floor hit SCP-233, and it fell into the crack in the floor with it. A building like this that covered an area of several thousand square meters would naturally not have any structural collapse just because a wall and 2 pillars in a corner were destroyed. After a small collapse, the dust settled. Behind the wall, there was a dark space. The rectangular cracks on the ceiling and the floor formed 2 paths. What's going on? Everything related to 9 will be destroyed? Qiu Feng asked. Looks like it, Hong Hu said. He immediately understood why Feng Bujue did not plan for him to be the one to act from the beginning. So, we have Qiu Feng, who is not good at math, go. Weighty words paused as something crossed his mind. Oh, I get it now. Among us, 3 of our nicknames start with 9 paintings, and the remaining one, Hong Hu, is level 29. Is that the connection? Ah, that's what I meant, Feng Bujue replied. Qiu Feng said, but have you ever thought that, from your point of view, the only connection between me and 9 is the word Qiu? But from my point of view, I can think of n connections. Well, there was nothing I could do about that. Before the operation, I couldn't tell you the characteristics of the object, and I couldn't ask you any questions related to Jiu because that would only speed up your thinking after you got the information, Feng Bujue replied. In any case, the fact that you're still alive means that my strategy has been successful. Feng Bujue shrugged. I'm quite confident in this plan. When I shouted, you were already standing about 20 meters away from that thing, and its effective range was only 23 meters. Even an ordinary person in real life would only need 2 to 3 seconds to reach the safe zone. After you heard that sentence, realized the meaning of the number 9, and connected it to the first connection between you and 9, the time you spent was enough for you to step out of that thing's effective range. Of course, if from your point of view, you have a close connection with this number and you connect it to yourself in less than a second, then you're unlucky. Qiu Feng did not have any opinion about Feng Bujue's attitude and words because he thought that Feng Yan had a point. The success rate of this plan was indeed high, and the man had designed it carefully to ensure his own safety. However, Qiu Feng raised another question. Wait a minute. You said that the thing's effective range is 23 meters? Yes, Feng Bujue said. The other 3 shared a look, and finally, Hong Hu said, then, here comes the problem. Now that this thing has fallen into the ground, unless it has fallen 23 meters, or else the path over there is still within its effective range. Since we already know the rules, once we get close to that corner, we'll be wiped out, Weighty Word said. You don't need to worry about that. Suddenly, a woman's voice rang out. The 4 players were surprised because the source of the sound came from the pitch-black space behind the wall. Accompanied by the sound of high-heeled leather boots stepping on the ground, a graceful figure leisurely walked out from the darkness. Similar to the last time they met, X-23's face was still so pure and beautiful. Her skin was still fair and smooth, and her long black hair flowed behind her neck, fluttering in the wind. The difference was that she had changed into a black one-piece leather outfit. Her curvaceous body was even more eye-catching under the cover of the leather. Other than her outfit, she had not changed much. Feng Bujue had no reason not to recognize her. After all, Brother Bujue had only met two anomalies. "Why are you here?" Feng Bujue asked. "This is a four-man scenario. Can't you think of any other lines to greet your friends?" X-23 showed a mesmerizing smile. Her fangs were exposed at that moment, and it gave Hong Hu's group a fright. Even though there was a distance of 30 meters between X-23 and the players, her voice traveled clearly into their ears. "Haha, I'm sorry." Feng Bujue also smiled awkwardly. "How have you been?" He knew that for X-23, the last time they met was probably 1 or 2 years ago, or even longer. "As you can see, I'm no longer limited by the rules of Level 4 and Level 3, X-23 replied. Hearing that, Feng Bujue understood immediately. 23 meant that she was at least a Level 2 anomaly, and that was why she could appear there. "That's good. Looks like you don't have to spend every second struggling for survival anymore." Yes, X-23 answered. Based on normal conversation etiquette, after that, she should have asked Feng Bujue how he was doing, but she did not. Furthermore, when she looked at Feng Bujue, there was a trace of pity in her eyes. You didn't appear here just to say hello to me, did you?" Feng Bujue asked. "I'm doing some recycling work," X-23 answered casually and changed the topic. "By the way, I can't stay here for long, so I'll cut to the chase." She paused for a second to observe the status of the 4 players before she continued. "Your main mission is to enter the detective club, right?" Without waiting for an answer, she continued. "The manager of the club is a very strange person, and his power is only second to the 4 pillars of divinity." She glanced at the black space behind her. "He created a buffer to stop me from entering the scenario to retrieve SCP-233. When you solved this puzzle, the barrier inside the buffer disappeared on its own. In other words, the manager has counted you as part of the progression of the scenario," Feng Bujue said. "Yes, I need to leave with this SCP as soon as possible, so, after I leave, you can continue to move forward." As she spoke, she raised her right hand and moved her finger slightly. In the next second, SCP-233 quickly rose from the cracked ground and hovered next to SCP-233. "He's upstairs." X-23 lifted her head to look up, and light seemed to flow through her eyes. "Be careful on the road, Feng Bujue." I will," Feng Bujue replied. "Take care of yourself as well. After all, I have to leave now." X-23 interrupted Brother Ju. She curled her finger, and SCP-233 flew into the black space behind the wall. "Will we meet again?" Feng Bujue asked. When they parted last time, X-23 had said goodbye forever, but she did not die like she expected. Instead, she appeared again. Therefore, Feng Bujue asked that question. "I will," Number 23 replied. With that, she turned around and walked into the darkness. The moment her figure disappeared into the darkness, she faintly said, "I definitely will." After X-23 entered the space, the wall that had been disintegrated miraculously recovered. Glowing data poured down like a waterfall and reconstructed the wall. However, the gap that led to the second floor and the hole in the ground were still there, and the concrete blocks that fell from the ceiling were still scattered on the ground. Brother Feng." About 1 minute later, one of the 3 spoke. The first to speak was Autumn Wind. "Can you explain what is going on?" "That beauty should be an NPC," Weighty Word said. "Why would an NPC mention something like a scenario?" Hong Hu said. "Furthermore, the scenario is randomly generated, so why do you act like you've known the NPC for a long time?" Feng Bujue really did not know how to answer them. After all, The game company had given him a heads up, and Pan Feng and Hua Xiong had discussed this with him. It was best to keep the anomaly a secret. Actually, she is a unique humanoid program in the game that is similar to a recycle bin. Feng Bujue started to make use of his novelist's ability to make up stories. As you can see, she is not affected by SCP-233. And you heard her say that she is doing recycling work, he said matter-of-factly. I've seen her once in another script, so she knows me, he said matter-of-factly. He purposely lowered his voice. Don't spread this around. If you do, I won't care if the Dream Company bans your account. The three were skeptical, but even so, they did not have any evidence to refute Feng Bujue's words. Indeed, with the Dream Company's pranks in the game, it is not impossible for their employees to design an AI program to wander around the scenario in the form of a beauty, weighty words said. Chiu Feng also buried his suspicions in his heart and joked, Brother Feng, the other party is a humanoid program. What's with the attitude of talking to each other like there's no one else around? You can't date in different dimensions. Feng Bujue was not someone who would keep quiet after being mocked. He instantly smirked. Humph! Who would have thought you would evolve into Leichio without the help of a lightning stone? You're still not done with your fairy jokes, are you? Ambitionist watched them silently from the side. He did not react to the two's lame jokes. At that moment, Hong Hu's mind was organizing the information and thinking about the problem. He obviously did not believe Feng Bujue's explanation, but different from autumn wind and weighty words, he soon connected the dots. He had only seen this term on the forum, and the information related to it was just some unconfirmed legend. However, what happened earlier could be explained by that term, anomaly. Chapter 307. Hong Hu had entered the industry when he was just a teenager. Without the support of any gaming studio, he worked his way through the gaming circle alone. He was already used to the pressure of life and the condescension from his family and friends. That was nothing to him. He had been bullied, lied to, and even threatened. Therefore, when he interacted with people he was not familiar with, he would always be more careful. He knew better than anyone the bitterness of the past decade. As someone with experience, even though Hong Hu was young, he was already quite shrewd. Facing Feng Bujue's half-hearted explanation, he understood instantly that the man was unwilling or unable to tell the truth. Therefore, Hong Hu knew his place. He did not press further and did not point out his suspicion about the anomaly. He soon moved on to another topic with his three teammates. Feng Bujue spent 5 minutes to explain the theory behind SCP-233 to his three teammates in detail. He also gave them a brief explanation of the SCP Foundation's setting. In a way, he cleared up the confusion of these curious people. Then, the four of them walked to the wall. The part of the floor next to the wall had not been repaired by the system, so there was a rectangular gap that was 9 meters long and 1 meter wide on the ground. Earlier, when they observed it from afar, it was hard to tell how deep it was. Now that the four of them were closer, they realized that the space under the gap was not that deep. It was less than 1 meter deep. In the whole lobby, the distance between the two pillars here is exactly 9 meters. The distance between the other pillars, walls, and other objects has nothing to do with 9. Regardless of whether the unit is decimeters, feet, or something else. If you insist on a relationship, then the angle between the walls, pillars, and the ground is 90 degrees. Feng Bujue added to his previous explanation. But from the perspective of puzzle solving, a unique answer has a higher chance of being correct. Therefore, I believe the breakthrough point is here. Hong Hu then said, even though it was me who suggested that you pay attention to information like distance during the inspection, to be honest, I did not take this seriously myself. He then turned to look at Brother Ju. I'm surprised that Brother Feng can accurately determine the distance between objects with just a glance. It's not a glance, I have a measuring skill. Feng Bujue replied. Every half a year, I will measure the distance that I take when I walk, and this is my measuring stick. He looked around. For such a large building, the error in measurement will be relatively large. But if this is a normal residential building, I only need to walk around, and I can measure the size of each room. If there is a mezzanine in the wall or something weird about the structure of the building, I can basically see through it immediately. When they heard the phrase, every half a year, Chiu Feng, weighty words, and Hong, whose expressions were already quite shocked, but Brother Ju continued on his own. Ignoring his teammate's reaction, he continued. Actually, the human body itself is a very useful measuring device. For example, heartbeat, pulse, and breathing can be used to measure time. Height, stride length, and arm span can be measured. With proper training, one can even accurately judge weight. A fanatical expression appeared on his face. If you're interested, I can teach you how to calculate the average density of a bucket of sh*T without the aid of tools, Brother Feng. No. Big brother. Chiu Feng was completely shocked. If I may ask, what do you do in real life? At that moment, the speculation in his mind was that he was a mad scientist. Artist. Feng Bujue had been holding this word in his heart for a long time. He had been waiting for it. The three teammates narrowed their eyes and looked at Feng Bujue meaningfully. Their minds were a mess. In any case, now that we know the location of the quest, it's upstairs. Feng Bujue brought the topic back on track. He raised his head to look up. Then our target is clear. Corresponding to the ground, there was a rectangular gap on the ceiling, and it was wide enough for the players to pass through. However, Feng Bujue naturally would not rush into it directly. He had to test it out first. Brother Ju picked up a rather large piece of building debris from the gap on the ground. With a flick of his arm, he tossed it into the gap above them. The piece flew up diagonally and landed on the tiles on the second floor 2 seconds later. From the sound, it did not sound like it triggered any trap. Looks like it's fine. I think I should go first, Chiu Feng said. In similar situations, he would usually choose the more proactive approach. From this choice, it could be seen that there was a difference between strategists. Both of them were wise men, but wise and brave and a steady tactician represented two different people with different styles of doing things. If it was weighty words, he would be like Brother Ju, thinking of the worst-case scenario. He would try his best to test the waters, and when there was nothing left to do, he would take the risk. Chiu Feng's principle was that when facing an unknown situation, as long as he did not see any negative factors, he would assume that it was safe. With a shout, Chiu Feng jumped up from the ground. He only stepped on the wall once. With the sound of the soles of his shoes rubbing against the wall, he jumped up to the second floor. When his teammates saw this, they were relatively calm. Obviously, for these players who were close to level 30, this kind of action was nothing. After level 20, if you could not jump more than 5 meters from the wall, you would be too embarrassed to greet others when you joined a team. What's the situation? Weighty words asked. There shouldn't be any danger, Chiu Feng replied. Why don't you come up first? The three exchanged a look, and no one objected. Therefore, they all stepped forward and jumped up to the second floor. The environment of the second floor was basically the same as the first floor. Be it the style of the tiles, the position of the pillars, or the lighting, they were the same as the first floor. The most obvious difference was that the height from the ground to the ceiling was 4 meters, but the height from the ground to the ceiling on the second floor was close to 8 meters. On the wall at the furthest end of this floor, there was no door. Of course, the players knew that behind that wall was the 23 by 23 by 23 room on the first floor. The four scanned their surroundings, and their eyes fell on the center of the ceiling on the second floor. There was a circular hole about 2 meters in diameter there, and a steel pipe extended down from the hole, connecting it to the ground on the second floor. Through this pipe, they could reach the third floor directly. Based on this, they want us to climb up the pipe? Hong Hu asked darkly. They don't want us to dance on the side, do they? Feng Bujue asked. Brother Feng, please have some self-respect. Weighty words advised sincerely. It's over. Now that you mention it, I'm already imagining that scene, Chiu Feng said. This is definitely a pointless increase in terror points. Hong Hu pushed on his glasses. Brother Feng, your intelligence is commendable, but your way of thinking is a bit shameless. Feng Bujue added with a smile. Humor is something that comes with being born, and it can't be changed. As he said that, he walked toward the pipe. I'd rather not say a joke like will a firefighter slide down from here. So, the point that you're trying to make is that you have the ability to be elegant, but you'd rather be vulgar. Hong Hu was a clever person, and he immediately understood what Feng Bujue was trying to say. You flatter me, Feng Bujue replied shamelessly. Hey, is that a compliment? As the four spoke, they reached the bottom of the hole. Looking up, there should be no light source on the third floor, and the hole was surrounded by darkness. With the light from the second floor, they could see that the top of the pipe was welded to the ceiling of the third floor, and it did not lead to higher floors. Even though it looks like we can go directly to the third floor, we should explore this floor as well. Chiu Feng looked at his teammate. Also, you guys have noticed, from the outside of the building, every floor of this building is the same height and there are windows. It's just that you can't see what's inside the building through the glass. But the actual situation inside is different. Then that's easy to explain. The view from outside the building is probably just a disguise. Hong Hu said. Or perhaps when we stepped through the door, we've already entered another space. When the wall of light appeared, these questions were already out of the question, much less SCP-233 and Brother Feng's NPC friend. Weighty words said. In any case, since I started playing this game, I haven't run into many pure sci-fi scenarios. Basically, all of them have some supernatural setting. Feng Bujue said, That doesn't matter. Now, can I go and grab that piece of concrete and throw it up to the third floor? Ha! Chiu Feng's lips twitched as he laughed drily. No one is going to stop you, he was right. No one was going to stop Feng Bujue. Even if they wanted to, they would not be able to. After a few words, the four of them still decided to give it a try and split up to inspect their surroundings. Since the second floor was similar to the first floor, this time, they took less time to confirm that there was nothing around them that could be triggered. Soon, the four returned to the steel pipe. Feng Bujue picked up the piece of concrete that he had tossed up from the first floor and tossed it up to the third floor. Once again, there was only the sound of the object landing. There was nothing else out of place. If you still want to go up first, bring a flashlight, Feng Bujue said calmly to Chiu Feng. I volunteered once, and now you're planning to scam me to the end. Chiu Feng replied rather helplessly. Let me do it this time. Hong Hu interrupted. Chiu Feng has already taken on many risks. From now on, it is more reasonable for us to take turns exploring. He paused to give his teammates time to object. 2 seconds later, seeing that no one replied, Hong Hu continued. From the situation on the second floor, not every floor is dangerous, and not every floor requires solving the puzzle to clear. My initial speculation is, there will be problems if there are odd-numbered floors, and even-numbered floors are used for resting and buffering. He turned to look at Feng Bujue and suddenly said, Brother Feng, you should have a usable flashlight on you, right? Yes, Feng Bujue said, and took out a flashlight from his jacket pocket. Actually, when Feng Bujue told Chiu Feng to bring a flashlight, Hong Hu had already guessed that. Oh! When Hong Hu accepted the flashlight from Feng Bujue, he looked at it and said, The label and description are all in German. Chiu Feng and Weighty Words heard that and understood what was going on. Feng Bujue admitted directly, because I bought it from a nearby convenience store. Didn't you say you only bought some snacks? Chiu Feng asked. I didn't say I only bought snacks. Feng Bujue shook his head. I also bought a foldable knife, a lighter, a palm-sized notebook, a ballpoint pen, and 2 flashlights like this, the kind with batteries. You bought some snacks on the way, didn't you? Chiu Feng roared. I say, you don't know German, so how did you know how much to pay? Weighty Words asked. The cash register at the convenience store shows Arabic numerals. As Feng Bujue said that, he took out a wallet from his pocket and pulled out a €20 note. He said proudly, the euro also has Arabic numerals printed on it. Why are you showing off the money you robbed? Oh, right, the kid that I robbed was using a Nokia phone. Feng Bujue put away the wallet and took out a phone. Look, no wonder this is a military-grade communication device. It even has a signal here. Not only did he admit that he was a robber, he even started to show off his loot. Chiu Feng was another victim who was mocked by Feng Bujue suddenly. I don't feel nervous anymore because of you guys. Hong, who was too lazy to continue watching. He used his right index and middle finger to hold the flashlight while his palm gripped the steel pipe. Using his left hand and his legs, he climbed up. The height that he needed to climb was only several meters, so Hong, whose upper body soon reached the surface of the 3rd floor. However, he did not rush into the darkness. Instead, he stayed on the steel pipe and used his legs to stabilize his body. He held the pipe with one hand and used the other to shine the flashlight around him. The space on the 3rd floor was very big, and the height was the same as the 1st floor, about 4 meters. Since there was no light source on this floor, and the flashlight's range was limited, Hong, who could only see about 10 meters around the circular opening. At least, the area that the flashlight shines on is empty. Hong, who said to his teammates below, "Oh, except for the building debris that Feng Bujue threw up." As he said that, he stretched out his leg and officially stepped onto the 3rd floor. Come up, it's fine. You don't want to consider walking around a few times and exploring a large area before letting us come up? Feng Bujue asked. Hong, who felt that this guy was getting more and more shameless, but he could not say anything. If I had eyes on the back of my head and 2 flashlights, I would consider this plan. Feng Bujue smiled and took out another flashlight from his pocket. Without saying a word, he leaped more than 4 meters into the air. Then, he used the steel pipe with one hand to push himself up to the 3rd floor. With a click, Feng Bujue turned on the 2nd flashlight in his hand and shone it in another direction. Are you scared? Hong, who was stumped by this question, yes, he was scared. In such a spacious, dark, and unfamiliar environment, anyone would feel a little apprehensive if they were to go around alone with a flashlight in their hands. Then you stay here and don't move. Stay alert. I will go look around first, Feng Bujue said in a relaxed tone. That was out of Hong Hu's expectation. From the start of the scenario until now, Feng Bujue had been hiding at the back, leaving the risk to his teammate. Who would have thought that he would show such surprising bravery at this moment? Hey, now is not the time to act brave and be a hero, Hong Hu advised out of kindness. Do you think I look like someone who would do something like that? Feng Bujue asked in return. Honestly, Hong Hu did not think so either. Fear was not only an expression that was written on one's face, it was also a contagious pheromone. Therefore, it was easy to distinguish between those who pretended to be fearless and those who were truly fearless. And Feng Bujue was obviously not afraid. When Brother Ju walked into this scary environment, the expression on his face was like he had walked into a maid cafe. There was a fundamental difference between this and the kind of person who would bring his girlfriend to a haunted house and yell at the top of his lungs like he was going to beat up the workers at any moment. I'll be back in a minute, Feng Bujue shouted at the two below. Why don't you two come up first? Just stay here with Hong Hu and don't move. If anything happens to me and I run back, the three of you will be responsible for helping me. When weighty words and autumn wind climbed up the steel pipe, Feng Bujue had already walked away without turning back. He walked further and further away, and soon, he became a speck of light in the darkness. Brother Ju had given it a lot of thought before he volunteered to scout ahead. First, he had a soul's eye and a sorcery weapon. Even if he could not use the items in his inventory, his close combat ability was one of the best in the game. At the very least, he would be better at fighting than these three strategists. Second, he was basically unaffected by the environment. Be it the oppressive and creepy atmosphere, the pressure and fear brought by the darkness, the sudden screams, the shadows, nothing could disturb him. Third, he would not get lost because his mind was constantly measuring his steps. Be it direction or distance, they were all very accurate. After all, no one knew what was on this floor. If there was a black wall that could move silently, perhaps after the players walked a distance and turned back, they would not be able to see the entrance that they had come up from. In conclusion, it was very appropriate for Feng Bujue to explore this floor alone. His observation and thinking would not deviate due to fear. If he triggered a monster or a trap, he would not be killed so easily. He would not be scared offline. The three teammates only needed to wait for his message at the circular exit where they could retreat at any time. Chapter 308. How did this happen? Feng Bujue mumbled to himself in the dark. At this moment, I should be playing the role of an outsider. He sighed. Sigh. Looks like a man as good as me, no matter where I hide, will be as bright and eye-catching as a firefly in the dark. The melancholy in his eyes, the stubble of his beard, the amazing fighting skills, they have all betrayed me. He mumbled these words to himself. Due to the darkness around them, the hearing was more sensitive due to the limited vision, and the enclosed space meant that the sound would travel further. Brother Ju's words drifted into the ears of his three teammates who were not far away. Such a shameless person. This is the first time I've met one in my life. Qiu Feng lowered his voice to comment. To be able to talk about these things in such a situation. Weighty words said. I suppose that is a sign of his strong mental fortitude. How unpredictable, Hong Hu said, and he shivered involuntarily. Then he pushed on his glasses. He is probably the kind of opponent that I do not wish to meet the most. I agree, Qiu Feng replied. It's hard to imagine what would happen if there was such a guy in the killing game. On this point, the three strategists had the same thought. Weighty words added. If he is not a teammate but an opponent, it is indeed a very bad thing. Have you noticed? Be it the action or the strategy, Brother Feng's method looks random, but there is a hidden meaning to it. Now that I think about it, everything that he has done has been more or less effective. Of course, other than his unique sense of humor. A schemer uses tricks. An open schemer uses the opportunity to make his move. Hong Hu said darkly. The former is the evil path. Normally, when one is not strong enough, they will use tricks to make up for the difference. Even if they succeed, it will only be temporary, and there are many loopholes. Once one sees through them, it will be easy to resolve. But the latter is the way of the king. It follows the flow and is untraceable. It is the king of scheming and cannot be stopped. He paused for a moment before continuing. Logically speaking, strategic players like us should pursue the latter. However, Brother Feng, it seems like he has drifted further and further away from the evil path. Qiu Feng said. A schemer is very clever, and a schemer is very good, Hong Hu said. But if there is someone who can guarantee that his every scheme will succeed, then he can be called a god of foresight. If this is the world of the Three Kingdoms novels, Brother Feng would probably be the kind of strategist who would place his plans inside a pouch and have his generals open it whenever they arrive at a place to show that he is a god of foresight, Qiu Feng said. The three of them discussed Brother Ju silently because they were squatting at the edge of the hole. As long as they lowered their voices and faced down, their voices would not travel too far. Therefore, Feng Bujue did not hear a single word of this conversation. If Brother Ju really heard that, he would not be ashamed but proud of it, and he would become more and more arrogant. About 10 minutes later, Feng Bujue slowly returned to his teammates. Looking at his expression, he was frowning. "Looks like you did not find anything," Qiufeng said. "Ha ha!" Weighty words laughed. "Actually, for Brother Feng to be able to return unscathed is already a reward. At least he has proved that there is temporarily no danger on this floor. Now, the 4 of us should split into 2 groups to explore this place again. We should be able to find some clues." Hong, who did not finish. Feng Bujue interrupted him. "I found a dead body in that direction." He pointed into the darkness. That was like a bucket of cold water in winter, splashing on his teammates' heads. The atmosphere dropped to freezing point, and everyone was silent. Feng Bujue continued. "To be precise, I found a rather complete crime scene." The 3 were still silent. They wanted to hear him finish before they gave their opinion. And then, Feng Bujue had more to say. "I found the bodies of the murderers in that direction." He pointed in another direction. "Their bodies?" Autumn Wind repeated. "The murderers, still referred to as their?" "Yes, based on my preliminary investigation of the crime scene, there are 4 murderers who committed the crime together," Feng Bujue said. "And the 4 murderers died around the crime scene?" Hong Hu asked. "No, only 2 died," Feng Bujue said. "The other 2 escaped to the 4th floor." "What? You found the path to the 4th floor?" Weighty Words asked. "Yes, there is a spiral staircase over there." Feng Bujue pointed in a 3rd direction. "The 2 surviving murderers left behind traces when they went up the stairs, so it was easy to find." He turned his head. "It was not wise to chase after them so recklessly, so I decided to come back to share the information with you guys." After he said that, his teammates fell into silence again. About 1 minute later, Feng Bujue said, "All right, now you should have a basic understanding of the situation. Follow me, I will bring you to the crime scenes according to the order." The "according to the order" was key, and the other 3 understood it immediately. Actually, the order in which Feng Bujue discovered the 3 crime scenes was not necessarily the order that he described, but he had analyzed the sequence of events through observation. Therefore, he described them according to the order of the 1st crime scene, the 2nd crime scene, and the path to the 4th floor. The 3 followed Feng Bujue and walked to a corner on the 3rd floor. When they were halfway there, they smelled a bad smell. It was probably the smell of a dead body. Soon, with the help of the flashlight, they saw a dead body lying flat on the floor. The deceased. Let's put it this way, she was a witch. She was wearing black clothes made of coarse cloth, and her cloak was tattered, dirty, and smelly. Her face was extremely ugly. She had a large hooked nose in the middle, and on the tip of her nose and chin, there was a protruding lump that oozed pus. The dense wrinkles were as clear as scars, and her pair of swollen eyes showed that she died with a grievance. Of course, if you thought that this iconic costume and appearance were not enough to prove that she was a witch, then, next to the body, there was a hat, a broom, and an apple. The hat was a black, pointed, wide-brimmed hat, the broom was made of wood, the style that Mr. Porter often rode on, and the apple was bright red and plump, like it was just plucked from the tree. Let me explain. There are 2 fatal wounds, Feng Bujue said as he squatted next to the body. Facing the body that was emitting a strange smell, he explained without any pressure, and both of them are obvious. He extended the flashlight and focused the light on the witch's head. Under the light, it could be seen that the skull of the corpse had been split open. Brain matter and blood flowed on the ground, and the brain in the skull was missing. The first wound was on the head. Someone used a sharp weapon and split her skull along the hairline. Feng Bujue said, "As for where the brain went, you will understand in a moment." Looking at Feng Bujue's casual explanation and the way he spoke like he had been through hundreds of battles, the 3 teammates were filled with respect for him. The second wound was the chest. Feng Bujue moved the flashlight down and shone it on the witch's torso. The witch's stomach had been cut open, and her ribs were pulled open to both sides. All of her internal organs were exposed to the air. The heart and gallbladder were taken away. Feng Bujue said, "The other organs have different degrees of damage, but at least they are still in the body." "Then, how did you know there were 4 murderers?" Qiu Feng asked. "Oh, the hint is quite obvious." Feng Bujue stood up. "First, there is no doubt that this is a witch." As he said that, he picked up the flashlight and shone it on a wall about 2 meters away from the body. At this moment, the 3 teammates revealed astonished expressions, because there was a line of bloody words left on the wall. The sentence was in English, and there was a translation in the system menu. It read, "There is no place in the world that is better than your own home." "Secondly, there is this hint," Feng Bujue said. "Hey, could this be?" Weighty Words had gotten it, but the other 2 were still confused. "Yes, this is Dorothy's line at the end of The Wizard of Oz." Feng Bujue shone the flashlight on the old witch's feet. "Look, she is not wearing shoes. That should be the proof." "You have to be kidding." This time, Qiu Feng and Hong, who also realized who the 4 murderers that Feng Bujue mentioned were. "Yes, this puzzle is so simple that it is like a joke." Feng Bujue used the light to shine on the dead body and explained, "Basically, the group of 4 worked together to subdue the witch, and then the lion tore open her torso and took away her gallbladder. The Tin Man dug out her heart, and then used the axe to split open the witch's skull so that the Scarecrow could take away her brain. And Dorothy took the witch's magic shoes." His tone was light, and he even pointed at the words on the wall. "Of the people who wrote on the wall at the crime scene, 9 out of 10 were idiots and 1 was a genius." He shook his head. "But this sentence confuses me." He looked at his teammates with a questioning gaze. "What do you guys think?" "I think you are too calm," Qiu Feng said. "When I said you have to be kidding, I meant that the situation before us ruined our childhood." "You mean that?" Feng Bujue said, "Unfortunately, I scoffed at this kind of children's literature when I was a child, although I did read a lot of it. Artists are indeed a bit abnormal." Hong Hu said coldly, and then brought the topic back on track. "About this line of bloody words, I think there are 2 possibilities." He paused for a moment and then continued. "First, the murder has nothing to do with the Wizard of Oz. This line of words was left by the real murderer to mislead us. Second, if Dorothy and her team really killed the witch, then this line of words may be a hint given by the system and not written by anyone." Similar to my initial hypothesis. Feng Bujue nodded. "Okay, let's go to the second location." He shone the flashlight on the body again and said, "Oh, by the way, now there is no need to ensure the integrity of the scene. Take whatever you can. It may be useful." Therefore, other than Feng Bujue, the other 3 each picked up an item. Hong Hu needed to hold the flashlight in one hand, so he picked up the smallest apple. Autumn Wind took the broom under Brother Ju's suggestion. When Autumn Wind asked why, Feng Bujue said, "Autumn Wind sweeps away the fallen leaves." Weighty Words took the witch's wide-brimmed hat. Name, Apple Type, Plot Item Quality, Normal Function. Unknown can be taken out of the scenario. No remark. A bright red apple. It looks very tempting. Name, Broom Type, Plot Item Quality, Normal Function. Unknown can be taken out of the scenario. No remark. It appears to have other functions other than sweeping the floor. Name, Pointy Hat Type, Plot Item Quality, Normal Function. Unknown can be taken out of the scenario. No remark. If you do not mind the strange smell inside, you can wear it. The descriptions of these 3 items followed the overall style of the scenario, but they did not give any clear hint. It was up to them to figure out how to use them. After all, the second last rule stated that they could not be taken out of the scenario, which proved that they were useful. "Look at these bloody footprints." Feng Bujua led his teammates to the second crime scene and used the flashlight to shine on the traces on the marble floor. The most obvious ones are the lion's footprints, followed by the Tin Man's. He pointed. The lighter footprints belong to the Scarecrow, and the remaining 2 rows of smaller footprints naturally belong to Dorothy. They walked along the wall, and as they spoke, they reached the second crime scene. It was about 100 meters away from where the witch died. "What is going on this time?" Autumn Wind asked. This time, there were 2 bodies before them. One was a little girl in a blue dress and shirt, and the other was a large lion. Feng Bujua walked forward like a narrator and said with great interest, "Dorothy should have been killed by the lion." He shone the flashlight on the head of the body. The side of the neck was bitten off, and the flesh and bone were torn off. The face was clawed until it looked like the main character of a horror movie. He turned around and pointed at a pair of silver high heels that were scattered around Dorothy's body. "These should be the witch's shoes. Looks like she did not put them on immediately after killing the witch but carried them away with her." "Wait a minute," Weighty Words said. "How come I remember in The Wizard of Oz the witch's shoes were red?" "That is a common misconception," Feng Bujua replied. "Actually, in Lyman Frank Baum's original novel, the shoes were silver in color. But because the 1939 movie version of The Wizard of Oz was such a classic, most of the later adaptations were influenced by it and set the witch's shoes to be red." "You even know something like that?" Even Hong, who was impressed by Feng Bujua's knowledge. "That is common knowledge," Feng Bujua replied. "What common knowledge? If you did not mention it earlier, I would not have known who the author of The Wizard of Oz was," Autumn Wind said directly. "Then I can't help it. After all, it is common knowledge to me." Feng Bujua walked to the lion's body. "Let's take a look at this thing." Obviously, it was chopped to death by an axe. Hong Hu looked at the lion's body and said, "And from the angle and depth of the wounds, as well as the blood stains on the ground, it was involved in a fight with the one with the axe before it died." Weighty Words added, "Based on the wounds, there is no doubt that the lion killed Dorothy and the Tin Man killed the lion. It should be said that the Tin Man and the Scarecrow worked together to kill the lion." Feng Bujua added, "Look." He squatted down and placed the flashlight on the ground. He hugged the lion's head with both of his arms and pried open the beast's mouth. "There is a bunch of straw in its mouth. Do you see that?" "Fine, fine. Don't be so serious," Autumn Wind advised. Feng Bujua closed the lion's mouth and patted the mane that was stuck to his clothes, but his hands were stained with blood. He did not mind it too much. He stood up and said, "But I believe the Scarecrow's power was unable to do much damage to the lion. Even if he participated in the attack, he would only be able to scratch an itch. In reality, it was the Tin Man who killed the lion. There are also messages here." When Hong Hu said that, the flashlight in his hand shone at the wall. There were also bloody messages left on the wall. "Ah yes," Feng Bujua replied. "It is also a very pointed hint. When you think you have gotten what you want, you have actually lost more." Other than Brother Jew, the other 3 stared at the sentence for a long time, and it was Weighty Words who spoke first. Ignoring the possible philosophical meaning of this sentence, the situation that it is referring to should be. He paused for a second before continuing. "The lion gained courage and wanted to eat Dorothy, but the Tin Man with a heart and the Scarecrow with a brain saw this and killed the lion." "On the surface, that is indeed the case," Hong Hu said. "Oh? On the surface?" Weighty Words asked. Autumn Wind added, "If we think about it, there are indeed many suspicious points." "For example?" Weighty Words asked. Hong Hu replied, "If before the lion gained courage, it did not have the courage to attack people, then how do you explain the old witch's death?" He pushed on his glasses. "Also, since Dorothy got the witch's shoes, why didn't she wear them and leave? The shoes have the power to teleport, don't they?" Feng Bujua said. "Let's put these questions aside for now. As he spoke, he bent down to pick up the pair of silver magic shoes. Follow me to the stairs leading to the 4th floor first. Chapter 309. This staircase should lead us to the 4th floor or somewhere else. In any case, it will lead us forward. Feng Bujue pointed his flashlight upward. Before the 4 of them was a spiral staircase that led upward. The staircase was made from stone, and it had a strange shape. From an architectural perspective, this staircase was impossible to build because there was not enough support. However, considering that this was a game, and the setting of the scenario was very unscientific, no one really cared about it. There are indeed footprints on the staircase. Weighty words leaned over to look at the staircase. And there are only footprints that lead upward. Hong Hu added. Ignoring the fact that they walked backward to return to this floor, the Scarecrow and Tin Man should have gone to the 4th floor and not returned, Chiu Feng said. Feng Bujue said, I've circled the entire 3rd floor and calculated the size. This floor is much bigger than the 2 floors that have lights. Obviously, there is a problem with space. The lack of lighting is probably to cover that up. He paused. I believe the leading clue on this floor is the smell. As long as we can smell the scent of the dead bodies, we will be able to find one of the 2 crime scenes. Then, following the bloody footprints, we will be able to find the other crime scene and the staircase that leads to the 4th floor. In other words, you believe that other than these 3 locations, there are no other clues on this floor? Hong Hu asked. At least that is what I believe. Of course, if we want to explore the middle area of this floor, it is not impossible, but in this kind of environment without light that will take a lot of time, and we might not find anything. Feng Bujue said. Currently, we have no idea how many floors there are above us and whether there are any lighting devices on those floors. We should be careful with the flashlight's power. I also think there is no need to explore this floor further, Chiu Feng said. Chiu Feng said, Brother Feng has already scouted the surroundings and found these 3 locations that can form a complete information chain. If we want to continue scouting, we can only split into 2 groups since we only have 2 flashlights. Furthermore, the scouting efficiency of one group is likely to be much slower than Brother Feng's. Seconded, weighty words said. Hong Hu said, I have no objection, but... He looked up at the end of the spiral staircase, where there was a rectangular wooden door embedded in the ceiling. Who is going to open that wooden door? What if there's an axe waiting up there? Just let Chiu Feng use a broom to push it away. Feng Bujue said, the axe will only hit the broom at most. You are so King smart. Chiu Feng replied. The sentence that sounded like a swear word was not blocked by the system. However, after he finished speaking, he still helplessly led the way up the stairs. Feng Bujue shrugged and glanced at the other 2 teammates. The 3 of them didn't say anything. They just smiled and followed Chiu Feng. The staircase was not long. After 1.5 rounds, Chiu Feng was close to the ceiling. He picked up the broom in his hand and used the end of the broom to push against the wooden door. With a strong push, the wooden door opened with a creak. Some light shone through the wooden door. Looking up, the 4th floor appeared to be a space with a high ceiling. There was a curved wall near them. Since the light came from the side, it was unclear what the source of the light was. Hey! What is this smell? Chiu Feng stood at the front. Once he opened the wooden door, he was hit by a weird smell. Probably another dead body. Feng Bujue stood behind him and replied calmly. Then, is it okay for me to go up like this? Chiu Feng asked. It's already a dead body. What is there to be afraid of? Feng Bujue said. His words were a matter of opinion. Even though most people in the world were afraid of dead bodies, there were quite a number of people who thought the living were scarier. After taking a few deep breaths, Chiu Feng leaped forward with all his might. He knew that if there was really an axe waiting to fall from his blind spot, it would be dangerous for him to sneak around. It was better for him to rush up and face the enemy on equal footing. Feng Bujue, who was following closely behind, had a relaxed expression on his face as he slowly followed behind them. Hong Hu and weighty words were blocked behind Brother Ju, so they could only follow him. After the four reached the fourth floor, they finally saw the situation above the wooden door. This was the interior of a windmill. The surrounding walls were made from wood and brick, and they formed a circle. And that light appeared to be sunlight, and it was shining in through the small window above the windmill. And that weird smell came from the scarecrow. On the wall beside the windmill, the four players found its dead body, and its death could not have been more strange. There was a rusted spear that pierced through the wall from the outside of the windmill and stabbed into the scarecrow that was standing inside the windmill. The scarecrow's dead body hung from the wall like a sausage. Since the head of the scarecrow was stuffed with the witch's brain, and the spear had pierced through its head, the brain matter had splattered all over the scarecrow. "Where should I start?" Chiu Feng said as he looked at this. "We'll know once we go out and take a look," Feng Bujue said as he walked to the door of the windmill and prepared to push it open. His teammates didn't stop him either. They just followed behind him as they walked out. Outside the windmill was a space that looked like a stage. The fourth floor was about the same size as the first floor. The ceiling was about 10 meters high, but there were no pillars around it. On the ceiling, there were blue sky and white clouds. On the four walls far away, other than the same sky and clouds, there were also green mountains and rivers. At the corner between the ceiling and the two walls, there was a sun that was hanging from 4 steel wires. The diameter of the thing was about 3 meters. It looked like it was made from paper, but for some reason it was glowing. The light that it gave off was no different from real sunlight. When it shone on one's body, one would feel warm. "Each floor is more interesting than the last," weighty words said with a sigh. Feng Bujue walked half a circle around the windmill and saw the truth behind the scarecrow's death. "Humph! I knew it was him." The other three also turned to look. They saw, outside the windmill, the lower half of the spear that killed the scarecrow was still hanging in midair, but the knight who used the spear to ambush was already dead on the ground. The dead man was wearing a standard medieval knight's armor, and his head had been chopped off along with the helmet. The wound on his neck was clean, and it looked like it was the work of an axe. Chapter 310. The floor of the fourth floor was no longer made of marble but was paved with mud and grass. At that moment, a bony old horse was grazing beside the decapitated body. From the horseshoe, saddle, and reins, it was undeniably the ride of the knight. Feng Bujue walked over, bent down, and patted the old horse's head. The old man did not react and continued to graze. "So, it's Don Quixote's turn now," Autumnwind said. "Yes, the man who ruled over the middle two worlds," Feng Bujue added. "No one has done it before, and no one will do it in the future." So, just like in the original novel, he saw the windmill as a giant and charged over on his horse. With a single spear, he killed the scarecrow that just came up from the third floor. Weighty words tried to analyze the situation based on the scenario and the logic of the scenario. Then the Tin Man charged out from the windmill and killed him. Hong Hu's eyes shifted. "Where is the Tin Man?" Then, he looked around. "We can see the end of this floor with a single glance, but I don't see it." He turned back to say, "And I don't see the path that leads to the fifth floor. The ceiling is all sealed. There is a sentence here, but I wonder if it counts as a message," Feng Bujue suddenly said. At that moment, he was standing next to the other half of the spear. "Look, it's written on the handle." Hearing that, the teammates gathered to take a closer look. As they expected, there was a sentence carved on the body of the spear. It looked like Spanish, but the system's translation could be seen in the game menu. "Use a smiling face to welcome the tragedy, use 100 times the courage to face all the misfortune." The group fell into deep thought again. Deliberately mystifying. Chiu Feng said. In addition to hinting at the original work, these messages are just some similar philosophical discussions. Perhaps it is very ironic when combined with the murder scene, but it has nothing to do with our puzzle solving. Hong Hu frowned. His train of thought was stuck. It's hard to say. Perhaps there will be more messages like this in the future, but the information we have is not enough to solve the puzzle. That's a good idea. If we compare these messages to the pieces of a puzzle, before we see the whole frame of the puzzle or collect more than 80% of the pieces, we will not be able to solve the puzzle. Since that's the case, let's focus on how to reach the 5th floor. Chiu Feng said as he looked around. Currently, our only clues are this windmill, a corpse, and an old horse. It's called Rocinante, Feng Bujua said. What? Chiu Feng was stunned when he heard that. He didn't know what the other party was referring to. I said, that horse's name is Nag Nan Nan, Feng Bujua explained. What? Is there another translation in the Don Quixote you read? I think this kind of music has both meaning and sound. No. Chiu Feng interrupted. I haven't read this book at all. I only know the general content. Even if I have, I probably won't remember the name of the horse. You haven't read it? Feng Bujua scoffed expressionlessly. Humph. You'd better kill yourself by swallowing feces. Hey, there are plenty of people who haven't read it. There's no need to kill yourself. Chiu Feng roared. Speaking of which, what kind of suicide is that? The book is not bad, Hong Hu said. Not bad? Feng Bujua turned to the person who tried to smooth things over. Your evaluation of a sharp, deep, cruel, humorous, and tragic epic is only not bad? He picked up the head on the ground with a serious face, opened the mask of the helmet, and revealed the corpse's horrible face. He said, Do you dare to say that again in front of this ridiculous, lamentable, and honorable immortal? I was wrong. Ambitionist felt a sense of oppression that came from somewhere, making him reply in a baffling manner. You've got the wrong person. Chiu Feng gasped. He turned to Feng Bujua. You're not the author, you're just a fan. Why are you being so righteous? Don Quixote combines realism and storytelling, tragedy and comedy, seriousness and humor, vulgarity and greatness at the same time. It's a seamless whole. Cervantes used his words to enlighten and move the world. Feng Bujua continued like he was giving a lecture. When I finished reading this book when I was young, I was inspired to write this kind of realistic fantasy with a critical tone. As long as I can write 30% of its standard and survive in this world, I can die without regret. The bond between Cervantes and me. You who spend all your time in the pokeball will not understand. Spend all your time in the pokeball? What's the point of using this kind of joke? Chiu Feng was running out of words. Weighty words held his face and shook his head. Can we return to the puzzle? We're already halfway through this chapter. You guys should stop. Okay, Feng Bujua replied instantly. Back to the topic. You've been scolding me for so long just to beat around the bush. Chiu Feng grumbled. Feng Bujua ignored him and continued. Do you see that? He carefully put down the head in his hand and raised his arm to point at the sun that was far away. How could we not notice it? The paper sun is glowing, weighty words said. If the paper sun can shine. Feng Bujua pointed to the side. The mountains and rivers, flowers and plants that are painted on the wall, could they be used as well? As the saying went, a mental patient would have a wider mind. If he did not say that, the few serious strategists would not have thought of that. The three teammates were enlightened. They studied their surroundings again, and this time, they were enlightened. They had many possible clues. Based on the sense of distance created by the painting, the cow over there appears to be closest to the plane of the wall. Hong Hu pointed at a wall. Feng Bujua glanced at that direction and then walked over. He stood next to the wall and realized that a small part of the rope poked out from the wall, and the rest of the rope was still inside the wall in the form of an oil painting, tying up the cow in the painting. From afar, one would not be able to see this detail clearly, but now Feng Bujue only needed to pull on the end of the rope, and he easily pulled the rope out from the painting. The whole cow was pulled from the wall to the grass in the three-dimensional space. He really did it, Qiufeng said. Does that mean that we can walk into the painting on the wall? Weighty Words asked. We can't. Feng Bujue answered Weighty Words' question as he used his hand to press against the wall. In any case, I can't get in. Hong Hu and the rest came over to give it a try, and it did not work. Then, how should we deal with this cow? Hong Hu held his chin. We can't have it use its horn to knock us into the air and then rush into the 5th floor, right? Huh. In the world of Tom and Jerry, perhaps that will work. Qiufeng laughed. Hey, gentlemen. Suddenly, another voice rang out. It sounded like a child's voice. The 4 players turned their heads and saw that on the painting on the other side of the wall, there was a small black dot. It was slowly growing until it turned into the shape of a person, creating a visual effect that felt like it was coming from afar. Not long after, the figure ran out of the wall without any sense of awkwardness and ran in front of the players. It was a little boy with brown hair. He was wearing old clothes with patches and a small hat. When he arrived, he was in such a hurry that when he reached Feng Bujue's group, he was already gasping for air and could not speak. Don't worry, child. Let's talk. We're not going anywhere, Weighty Words said kindly. Ha! Ha! The boy took 2 deep breaths and said, Ha! Gentlemen, I'm sorry. Can I beg you, can you return the cow to me? Return it to you? Weighty Words asked in a questioning tone. It's like this, the boy said pitifully. I showed my mother the magic beans that you gave me, and I thought she would be proud of me. But she was so angry that she threw the magic beans out of the house. She said she was disappointed in me and that I was an idiot. He stuttered. So, I quickly picked up the beans and ran back. Thankfully, you're still here. Gentlemen, can I use the magic beans to exchange for me Kuer? I beg you. The boy showed a pleading look and reached out his hand. He was holding the small cloth bag that contained the magic beans. Let us discuss this. Feng Bujue suddenly interjected and immediately signaled his teammates with his eyes, signaling for them to come over. The 4 gathered together and whispered among themselves. I get it now. This kid is the main character of Jack and the Magic Beans, right? Qiufeng said. Pulling out the cow will trigger the event. After we exchange the magic beans with him, we'll be able to break through to the 5th floor. Of course, I've noticed that as well, Feng Bujue said. Hong Hu asked, then, why did you call us over so mysteriously? Weighty Words also looked at Brother Ju with an inquiring gaze. I'm just asking for your opinion, Feng Bujue said. Should we slap this kid to death and snatch the beans? You've lost your mind, you've lost your humanity. You won't even let a child go. After hearing those 3 sentences, Feng Bujue sighed deeply. The next second, he led the cow with a big smile and walked to little Jack. In a kind tone, he said, Ha ha, of course, little Jack. He passed the rope to little Jack and said, next time, remember to keep your promise. Also, don't easily believe the words of strangers. Use your brain before you do anything. Don't disappoint your mother's expectations of you. You have to live up to the trust of the party and the country. Become a useful person, contribute to the people, contribute to the motherland, contribute to mankind. M%. Hong Hu and Qiufeng clamped their hands over Brother Ju's mouth and pulled him away. Weighty Words told little Jack awkwardly, don't mind what that uncle said. Go home. Then he accepted the magic beans from little Jack. Jack blinked with an inexplicable expression, thanked him, and turned around to leave with the milk cow. Chapter 3:11. After the 4 got the magic beans, they did not hurry to bury them. Instead, they started a full inspection of the fourth floor. Clues like the rope could only be found after a closer inspection, so they had to investigate it thoroughly. Other than that, they also wanted to know, where did the Tin Man go? Theoretically speaking, on this kind of soft ground, with the Tin Man's weight, he should have left a trace. However, they only found some footprints beside Don Quixote's body. After about 10 steps, the footprints suddenly stopped. If the footprints disappeared beside the wall, then it could be explained that the Tin Man had walked into the mural, but that was not the case. The footprints stopped very far from the wall, in an area among the grass. It was as if the Tin Man had suddenly disappeared into thin air while he was walking. The mysteries of this scenario came one after another, and each one was stranger than the last. The Keter level SCP on the first floor was just a small test. After going up to the third floor, before they understood the whole situation of the Wizard of Oz, Don Quixote died on the fourth floor, and then there was the child who traded a cow for beans. Even Fong Bujue had a hard time imagining what they would run into next. The exploration continued for 10 minutes, and there was no progress. There was no clear hint that indicated where to bury the magic beans. Therefore, they randomly picked an empty spot to plant the beans. Now I know why the floor of this floor is made of mud and grass, Chiu Feng said as he used the foldable knife that Feng Bujue had given him to dig the ground. There's no need to dig too deep. In the story, once the magic beans are planted on the ground, they'll grow a beanstalk, weighty words reminded them. So, do you think we should plant all the beans or just one and see the reaction? Feng Bujue held the bag of magic beans and took one out to study it. Didn't the item description say that it's a plot item? Hong Hu said. There's no point in keeping it. Perhaps it has some hidden effect, like eating one can revive you on the spot, Feng Bujue joked. That's a senzu bean, Chiu Feng corrected. Fine, Feng Bujue said as he walked to Chiu Feng and poured the bag of magic beans into the small hole that Chiu Feng had dug. Chiu Feng pushed the soil with his hands and buried it shallowly. Then he handed the knife back to Feng Bujue and patted the dust off his hand. Done. Soon there will be a change, weighty words said. Feng Bujue said, otherwise? Shall I water it? Why are you holding it in? Chiu Feng had a bad feeling again. He squinted at Feng Bujue and said, you can't take off your pants in this game. Don't think too much. I said water, not pee, Feng Bujue said. You're the one who mentioned shit and piss the most out of all the people I've met since I started playing games. Hong Hu could not take it anymore. From what you said earlier, you seem to be someone from the cultural field, but why are your words so? So what if my words are elegant? There are plenty of people in my line of work who are good at talking, but their character is not better than those who are bad at talking. As the saying goes, Tang Sect and Song Zhu are not as good as those who are good at talking. As Feng Bujue spoke, he walked toward a wall. When he reached the wall, he squatted down and used the pair of silver shoes to collect some water from the small stream on the wall. Oh, there is such a method. Chiu Feng saw Feng Bujue return with the water, and he understood what Feng Bujue meant earlier. The two shoes poured the water, and the water soon seeped into the soil, causing the small mound to move slightly. The four reacted quickly. They knew that something was going to happen. Without the reminder from their companions, they all retreated a certain distance away. Several seconds later, there was a boom. A beanstalk that was as thick as a tower broke through the ground and shot up like a dragon. The tip of the beanstalk was like a drill, and the stalk behind it was intertwined with each other, curling into a twist. The players thought that the beanstalk would break through the fourth floor's ceiling, but to their surprise, it rushed directly into the sky that was painted on the ceiling. After a full 5 minutes, the beanstalk stopped growing and stopped moving. The four raised their heads, but they could not see the top of the beanstalk, nor could they see what was above the cloud. We shouldn't be able to cross into this painting, right? Weighty words said. Not necessarily. Hong Hu pushed on his glasses and looked up. We've only tried the 4 walls, but we haven't tried the ceiling yet. Assuming we can climb up the beanstalk into the sky, based on the height, we probably won't reach the top for another 1 or 2 kilometers, Qiu Feng said. Feng Bujue sighed. Ah, I remember when I climbed up to this height, I stole the ultra-holy water from a deity at the top of the tower. Isn't it just Kalin Tower? Qiu Feng roared. But it's one thing for weighty words to hold the hat, but Qiu Feng is holding the broom. How are we supposed to climb up? Hong Hu asked. How about holding it in your mouth? Feng Bujue suggested. You do it. Qiu Feng handed the broom to Feng Bujue without hesitation. Sure. Feng Bujue agreed easily and passed the pair of shoes to the man. Help me hold this. Qiu Feng was shocked. He accepted the shoes woodenly and shoved them into his pocket. Qiu Feng's pocket was bigger than Feng Bujue's suit. Then, he used his shocked eyes to see Feng Bujue hold the broom horizontally and calmly walk toward the beanstalk. I remember when I was practicing the ultimate skill of the 3-blade style, I used to bite on a hilt that was thicker than this for the whole day. Feng Bujue bit on the broom and mumbled incoherently. His saliva was dripping from his mouth. I'll bet you 50 cents that there's something wrong with this man's mind. Qiu Feng narrowed his eyes as he looked at Feng Bujue's back. Weighty words and Hong Hu beside him replied in unison, What's the point of betting on something so obvious? The 4's stamina in the game was far better than normal, so climbing up the beanstalk was quite easy. It did not take long for them to successfully enter the sky that was painted on the ceiling. Of course, from their perspective, the world around them was still 3D. From that moment onwards, it was hard to tell which floor they were on. Based on visual observation, after another 10 minutes of climbing, the 4 of them would have reached the height of any building. Just like that, they crawled and crawled. About 20 minutes later, they saw a golden cloud. The cloud was corporeal, and it was right next to the beanstalk. There was a large leaf on the beanstalk that extended toward the cloud, hanging by the edge of the cloud. Seeing this kind of obvious path, the 4 were energized. They increased their climbing speed, and 2 minutes later, they were on top of the cloud. Standing on top of the golden cloud, everything was clear to them. This place was like a continent on top of the cloud, and everything was covered in a golden glow. About 100 meters away, there was a Disney-style castle that was commonly seen in fairy tales. Looking into the distance, one could see that on top of the castle's tallest tower, there was a long ladder, and the ladder led all the way to the clouds above. From that ladder, we should be able to reach the 5th floor, Feng Bujue said. You still have the concept of floors? Qiu Feng asked. Compared to the floor, I'm more concerned about, where has the Tin Man gone? Will we run into him on the higher floors? Hong Hu asked. I think we should focus on the situation before us, Weighty Words said. If we are still in the story of Jack and the Beanstalk, will there be a giant living in the castle before us? Come, here's your broom. Take it. Feng Bujue ignored them and passed the broom to Qiu Feng. Take it. I'll take care of the shoes. Qiu Feng did not want to take the broom that was covered in saliva. Really? Feng Bujue dragged out the word. Of course, Qiu Feng replied. Okay. Feng Bujue agreed easily. Then he placed the broom behind his neck, opened his arms, and placed his wrists on the 2 ends of the broom. He waddled toward the castle and he sang, In the sea of bitterness, love and hate rise. In this world, it's hard to escape from fate. Ha! Ha ha! Hong Hu could not help but laugh. He really can play no matter the situation. You have to admire him for that, Weighty Words agreed. The 3 followed Brother Bujue toward the castle. Several minutes later, they reached the front door. It's clear when we're here, Feng Bujue said. At least from the size of the door, it's not a giant who lives in this castle. He was not wrong. Even though the door's height and width were large, it was obviously meant for a normal human being. Then, should we knock or? Before weighty words finished, Feng Bujue had already retreated 10 meters away. I'll support you mentally. He stood at the back and roared like it was only natural. Then this time, I'll be the one to knock, weighty words said. So far, he had not taken the lead, so based on the rotation, it was his turn. Bang bang bang! Weighty words grabbed the ring on the door and knocked 3 times. After about 20 seconds, there was no response, so he knocked 3 more times. 1 minute later, there was still no response. They split up to look through the window, but the castle's windows were very tall, and they were made of tinted glass. Under the golden light, they could not see anything inside. There's no other way. We'll have to force our way in, Autumn Wind suggested. Hong Hu nodded and grunted in agreement. Weighty words rushed to say, leave it to me. I can still open a door of this size. He faced the door and got into position. He activated his skill and pushed with his palm. But nothing happened. Haha. I'm sorry. My fighting mastery is only level E, so the skill failed, weighty words said with a dumb smile. Hong Hu and Autumn Wind both laughed. It's nothing. It's normal. Let me try again, weighty words said. Then he tried again. This time it seemed to be a success. A gust of wind whistled forward and hit the area where the door was locked. A hole the size of a washbasin was blasted open in the middle of the thick door. The 2 pieces of the door panel loosened and slowly moved to the side. Among the non-combatant players, practically everyone had a more practical E-rank active combat skill. Even if they could not get it in the scenario, the players would go to the auction house to buy one. After all, this kind of skill was not expensive, and it was not bad. Only Feng Bujue, who took the puzzle route and did not buy the skill, managed to get his fighting mastery to level C. Brother Feng, there's no danger. You can come over now, right? Hong Hu turned back to shout. If the door suddenly closes on its own, then we'll be in trouble. Feng Bujue did not need the reminder. He had been watching from afar for a long time. When Hong Hu spoke, he was already moving forward. The 4 walked into the castle together. After the door opened, there was a curved staircase that led upward. The staircase was close to the walls, and it went up in a circle. A large chandelier hung from an extremely long chain. It hung down from the ceiling. The ceiling was very high, but the chandelier was very close to the ground. It was only 2 meters tall, and they could reach it with their hand. Walking around the staircase, they could reach the 2 ends and the back of the castle. Naturally, the 4 did not go upstairs immediately. Instead, they planned to explore the first floor to see if there were any clues or equipment. In the story of Jack and the Beanstalk, the castle where the giant lived had the existence of the chicken that laid the golden egg. Even if there was no golden egg in this castle, it would be good to have a few hints. But once they did, their sanity points would drop. Instead of calling this castle luxurious, it was more like it was grotesque. In the golden, dreamy light, the castle did not give off the feeling of a fairy tale. If anything, there was an indescribable eeriness to it. The design of the staircase and chandelier at the front door was already strange, but that was just the beginning. There were many similar designs inside the castle. For example, in the dining room on the first floor, there was a long table, more than 10 meters long, covered with a zebra-patterned tablecloth. There were also dozens of tall chairs on both sides, as if they were for the referee of a tennis match. There was also the sink and counter in the kitchen. The former was as big as a bathtub, while the latter was as small as a mobile phone screen. The stove was as low as a toilet, and the firewood was added from a slanted slope. Then there was the dance hall. The dance floor in the middle was not round or square, but lightning-shaped. It was the kind where the rapid cobra could run like lightning. The stage for the band to stand on was like a concave slope for skateboarding. The U-shaped ground could not be used to lay large instruments. Well, this castle is like a 29-year-old woman, Feng Bujue commented leisurely when they returned to the front door on the first floor. Endocrine disorder? Chiu Feng asked. Feng Bujue said. I was going to say hysterical and unreasonable. I didn't expect you to say something like that. Who is the one making a personal attack? You pointed out her age, gender, and personality. I only said that it was a biological phenomenon, and now it's a personal attack. Qiu Feng roared. That's enough. The design of this place has nothing to do with us, Hong Hu said. Since there is nothing on the first floor, let's go up to take a look. The group followed the staircase that led to the front door and went up. The staircase led them all the way to the top, and there was not even a door or entrance in the middle. Looks like to enter the middle few floors of the castle, we need to take a detour from the top, Weighty Words said. Or, there is a hidden path on the first floor that we have not discovered? No. Normally, castles are like that. Feng Bujue denied. If you have a cross-sectional map of the castle, you'll understand that the middle area is usually the last to be reached. You have to follow a certain order through the front porch, the chapel, the back porch, the dance hall, the underground pool, the clock tower, and so on before you reach the middle. The middle area is called the top floor of the demon castle, right? Before this, you had to kill a boss every time you arrived at a new place to gain a new skill, right? Hong Hu could not help but mock. Yes. Feng Bujue nodded and told Weighty Words, Look, this is what it means to know the game. What do you mean by know the game? Who hasn't played the demon castle before? The group chatted, and they soon reached the end of the staircase. There was an arched wooden door there. Qiu Feng walked at the front and was the first to see the words on the door. It was a row of golden words carved in English. The handwriting was quite fancy, and the words read, Illogical things are not always obvious. Again? Qiu Feng said. There is no need to say any more. There is a dead body waiting for us inside the door. Then, he pushed the door open. The 4 players entered one after another, and what appeared in front of them was a bedroom. This was probably the most normal room that they had seen since they entered the castle. The walls and ceiling were pink, the floor was wooden, and a large bed was placed in the middle of the room. There was a dresser by the wall. This was obviously a woman's room, or rather, the bedroom of a princess. Hey, there is someone on the bed. Qiu Feng noticed with one glance that the mattress on the bed was slightly bulging, and the body under it was moving up and down. Leave it to me. Feng Bujue reacted quickly. With a roar, he tossed the broom to the ground and charged forward. The other 3 stopped him, and Weighty Words was the first to ask, What are you doing? Before Feng Bujue could answer, Qiu Feng said, Isn't this the louse on a bald man's head? Isn't it obvious? He scoffed. From the looks of it, this is the story of Sleeping Beauty. Based on the order of taking the lead, it should be my turn this time. Hong Hu's glasses started to glow, and as he spoke, he moved forward. Trident capture. Feng Bujue charged forward and tackled Hong Hu from behind. Humph. Ryoko, do you think you can fool us by pretending to be calm? Even if you have forgotten that my ID is Hong Hu. Ryoko, calling me Ryoko is too. Before Hong Hu could finish, Qiu Feng cut him off. What are you guys doing? This is so ungentlemanly. The princess will be so disappointed when she wakes up. As he spoke, he adjusted his collar. In this situation, it's better if I. Invincible Wheel of Beacon. Feng Bujue jumped at Qiu Feng again. Lei Qiu, I advise you not to act rashly. There is a very long flight of stairs outside the door. With my invincible Wheel of Beacon, I will kill even a god. Even though the 3 were having a good time, it was just a joke. Teammates would not do anything that would hurt each other. However, looking at the group's behavior, Weighty Words, who was more level-headed, stood to the side and shook his head. Ah! Suddenly, a man's deep voice came from under the covers. This voice caused the 4 players to freeze. So long-winded. So noisy. The voice roared in a domineering manner. The next second a tall werewolf with a gray mane all over his body, wearing a pink bathrobe and a plastic shower cap, lifted the blanket and sat up. Chapter 312. Oh, Grandmother Wolf. Feng Bujua's expression seemed to say, "So that's how it is." "What grandmother?" "I'm male," the werewolf corrected Brother Jew. "Big Bad Wolf," Feng Bujua said again. The werewolf scoffed. "Stupid prejudice. How can there be a name like Big Bad Wolf? Could it be that your mother would name you Danliren?" "Big Bad Wolf," Feng Bujua said again. "Stop bullshitting me. I'm not a wolf. I'm a werewolf," the werewolf corrected again. "Don't werewolves only transform on the night of the full moon and stay in their human form most of the time?" Feng Bujua asked. "I was born in this form. Do you have a problem with that?" The werewolf replied. "Oh. So, you're the super werewolf who was born with a combat power of 10,000. Feng Bujua said seriously. "Are you talking about Broly?" Autumn Wind mocked. "You woke me up, and now you're talking nonsense. How arrogant!" The werewolf's eyes flashed fiercely. "Aren't you afraid of being eaten by me? On the land below the castle, there is a body that is still warm. If you want to eat human flesh, you can consider going there," Feng Bujua immediately said. "You sold out Don Quixote just like that?" Weighty words said with his lips twitching. "If you like to eat fresh meat, I recommend a little boy who lives on that land. His name is Jack. He has a cow and a charming single mother at home. You can do whatever you want with them," Feng Bujua said. Hong Hu was shocked. "Brother Feng, I think wolves are kinder than you, if you want to eat something rare." Feng Bujua was still trying his best to promote. "In the cellar under a windmill, there is a dead lion." The werewolf was dumbfounded. He wanted to give it a try, so he made a ferocious expression again and said, "I want to eat little girls." Feng Bujua said calmly, "I was just about to say, there was a loli beside the lion's body. Although she had been dead for a while, she hadn't decomposed yet. If you have any special hobbies, hey?" Chiu Feng quickly stopped Brother Jew. "Brother Feng, please behave yourself." Sigh. The werewolf let out a deep sigh as his face turned gloomy. "Am I really a werewolf without any deterrence? No. I don't think that's your problem," Hong Hu said. But the werewolf did not seem to hear him and continued to mutter, "From the beginning, I should have stayed in the forest of my hometown. It's good to eat some rabbits, deer, insects, wild fruits, and so on. Why do you come out to eat people for no reason? Now, she's become like this. She's being kept as a pet and has to wear this kind of pink bathrobe. Mr. Werewolf, I wonder who is keeping you as a pet?" Weighty words asked. "A giant?" "What giant? Where is the giant?" the werewolf asked. "Then, you're referring to," Weighty words said. "Little Red Riding Hood," the werewolf replied. The four players fell into deep thought. "That little girl is the incarnation of the devil." As the werewolf narrated, his eyes revealed a deep fear and pain. His tall body was also trembling. Under that petite body and innocent face, there is a superb agility, an extraordinary fighting instinct, and a cruel and murderous nature. Her various dose skills can be said to be at the peak of perfection, without any flaws. Other than the boss, no one in this space is her match. "Boss?" Hong Hu asked sensitively. "You mean, the boss of the detective club?" "Of course it's him. Is there a second boss here?" "Mr. Werewolf, I sympathize with your experience." Feng Bujua spoke again. "We're going to the detective club to meet the boss. If you can tell us how to get there, perhaps I can help you talk to the boss and have Little Red Riding Hood release you." "The boss is on the 7th floor," the werewolf replied. He used his claw to point at a door on the other side of the room. "If you want to go up, go out from that door. Walk down the corridor, turn left, and you'll reach the castle's attic. There's a skylight in the attic, and outside the skylight, there's a ladder that leads to the 5th floor. But what's on the 5th floor, I have no idea. I say, you look quite free, so why don't you escape? Autumn Wind asked. I've climbed the stairs, but the door that leads to the 5th floor is too narrow, and I can't crawl through it, the werewolf replied. He paused. Other than that, my home is on the ground below the castle, but this castle is built on the clouds. I can't jump down, can I? When we came up, we used magic beans to grow a giant beanstalk, Autumn Wind said. You should be able to climb down the beanstalk now. Really? The werewolf heard that, and his eyes glowed. Where is it? Show me. As he spoke, he rushed over and grabbed Xiao Feng's arm, lifted him up, and dragged him to the window. The werewolf moved very fast, and he was very strong. Before Autumn Wind could react, he was already dragged to the other side of the room. To Autumn Wind's consternation, the werewolf's action that did not have any intention of harming him instantly depleted 10% of his life points. After Feng Bujue saw this, he whispered to Weighty Words and Hong Hu, who were next to him, if this man is an enemy monster, then he's probably a mini-boss, yes. Thinking about all the things you did to provoke him, I'm covered in cold sweat, Hong Hu replied. Look, that's it. It's quite obvious. Autumn Wind was panicking. If the werewolf suddenly attacked, at such a close distance, he would be killed instantly, so he used a polite tone to point out the location of the beanstalk for the werewolf. Ha ha ha! The werewolf laughed. This is great. The laugh only lasted for a few seconds before his expression changed. I can't waste any more time. I have to hurry. If Little Red Riding Hood returns, she will chop the beanstalk in half. He turned back to say, Thank you, take care of yourselves. Then, he jumped out of the window and landed on the slope of the castle wall. After a few jumps, he landed smoothly. The 4 players gathered in front of the window to take a look. They saw the werewolf step into the clouds and run toward the distant beanstalk on all 4s. He didn't even bother to take off his bathrobe. Grandmother Wolf, who is afraid of Little Red Riding Hood. Hong Hu looked at the werewolf's back and mumbled. By the way, didn't he mention earlier that Little Red Riding Hood will return? Weighty Words reminded him. I'm curious. What method did Little Red Riding Hood use to leave the castle in the clouds? Feng Bujue asked. Could it be the sky dance skill? Can you stop talking about the Dragon Ball? Autumn Wind asked. Sure. Feng Bujue agreed expressionlessly and immediately changed his tone. Could it be that one of her sprites has mastered the sky dance skill? Autumn Wind lowered his head and held his forehead with one hand. Let's talk about the setting of the Dragon Ball. Chapter 313. Following the hint given by the werewolf, the 4 soon found the attic and climbed up the ladder outside the skylight. The corridor outside the room branched off, and perhaps there was a way to reach the middle of the castle. However, Brother Ju and the rest did not explore it because the hint given by the werewolf stated that 1. Little Red Riding Hood was very strong and unfriendly. 2. She could return to the castle at any moment. From the perspective of the game, the NPC had given you 2 very clear messages. If you still did something that went against the message, you would definitely face great danger. You might even trigger an instant death plot. Therefore, they decided not to stay any longer. The 4 climbed the ladder for 5 minutes, and after passing through a cloud that did not move, they saw the end of the ladder. There was a circular black hole there, and the top of the ladder was resting on the edge of the hole. The hole was drawn in the sky, just like the holes in the Warner cartoons that could be drawn out of thin air and one could crawl into them. When they got closer, they realized that the hole was not that small. As long as they were not too fat, they would be able to squeeze through it. Of course, the werewolf would not be able to squeeze through it. Due to the forward bend of his neck, the enlargement of his torso, and the way he climbed the ladder, he was destined to be limited to the space below the 5th floor. Another dark floor. Feng Bujue was the first to step onto the 5th floor. He picked up the broom, which he had dropped when he reached the top of the stairs, and commented. Hong Hu, Chiu Feng, and weighty words followed closely behind him and entered the 5th floor. Now we know that this building, if it can still be called a building, there are only 7 floors in total. Hong Hu said. In other words, so far, we have already completed 4 out of 7 of the scenario. That is not right. Weighty Words was a patient and rational person. He replied, as the saying goes, the halfway point is 90. No matter what, the closer we are to the end, the more we cannot rush. For example, during the injury stoppage time of a soccer match, if the whole team has the mentality that it will be over soon, the danger of losing the ball will greatly increase. I agree with that. Feng Bujue said. In many horror movies, the carelessness of the surviving characters in the last few minutes leads to total annihilation. As he spoke, Brother Ju took out his flashlight again and turned it on. Feng Bujue did not ask for the flashlight that he had given to Hong Hu earlier. Ever since they reached the 4th floor, the item had been left on the other party's body. Hong Hu took the opportunity to take out the flashlight from his pocket and turned it on. The first thing the two of them did was the same. They first used the light to scan the surrounding area, then immediately shone it up. The ceiling and floor of this floor had returned to the state of the 1st floor. The floor was made of tiles, and the ceiling was only about 4 meters high. With just the light from the flashlight, he could not see where the surrounding walls were. It seemed that this was also a rather spacious space. Before Feng Bujue could finish his sentence, a voice came from the darkness and interrupted him. How about we stick to the old rules? I'll go to the surrounding area alone, gentlemen. A young girl's voice rang out. This statement caused the 3 players to break out in cold sweat. Their terror points rose to more than 50%. Even though Feng Bujue was not afraid, he knew that something was wrong. He thought, could it be that Little Red Riding Hood is waiting for us here? Click. With a soft sound, a small flame appeared in the darkness. Initially, the flame was only the size of a grain of rice, but for some reason, it expanded rapidly in seconds until it lit up the whole floor. A small figure in a brown cape appeared in everyone's sight. Her cheeks were red, her clothes were old and thin, and she was barefooted. At that moment, the little girl was holding a basket in her left hand, and in her right hand was holding a burning match. This does not appear to be Little Red Riding Hood, but Autumn Wind lowered his voice and wanted to share his speculation. I can see it now. Feng Bujue interrupted him. From his, Hong Hu, and weighty words' eyes, they naturally knew who this was. The little girl walked closer to the players and asked, I'm sorry, but do you want to buy some matches? The 4 players looked at each other and did not know how to answer. Please buy a box of my matches, she repeated in a pleading tone. Then, Autumn Wind seemed to be reminded of something. He walked forward and took out the magic shoes from his pocket. Can I use this pair of shoes to trade for a box of matches? The little girl looked at the pair of silver magic shoes and hesitated for a moment before asking, Really? Sir, this pair of shoes looks like they are worth a lot. She looked like an honest child. It's fine. I think this is a fair trade, Autumn Wind replied. Okay then, thank you, sir, the little girl replied. At that moment, the match in her hand went out, and the whole floor returned to darkness. Autumn Wind's vision darkened, but thankfully, his teammates soon arrived. The flashlight lit up the area around Autumn Wind, but the little girl had disappeared. The shoes in Autumn Wind's hand had also disappeared. She's over there. Feng Bujue's eyes were sharp, and he quickly found the clue. At the spot where the little girl first appeared, there was a box of matches. On the tile, there was a sentence that looked like it had been painted there by smoke. It looked like it was written in Latin, and the system's translation read, "A sincere act of kindness without expecting anything in return." After reading it, weighty words said, "So, that's how it is. The magic shoes are used here. I thought it would be something like Cinderella." Autumn Wind picked up the match from the ground. It was a flash of inspiration. I saw that she was not wearing any shoes, so I thought of that. A lowly fetish and ankle fetish, huh? Fong Bujue scratched his chin. How can you twist everything to such an extent? Autumn Wind grumbled. During the few seconds when the surroundings were completely lit up, did you observe the environment? Hong Hu pulled the topic back on track. I did. The whole floor is empty, but over there. He raised his arm to point. There's a door. That's the same as my observation, Hong Hu replied. Then, are we going to go there directly? How about I light another match, and we take a look? Autumn Wind said as he opened the matchbox. To his surprise, there were only 4 matches inside. There's no need for that. We'll each take one. Fong Bujue glanced at the situation inside the matchbox and said directly. The other 3 did not say anything. They understood what it meant when the number of plot items was equal to the number of players. Since that was the case, they would not waste their limited items to illuminate their surroundings. Using the flashlight, the 4 walked in the direction that Weighty Words had pointed, and they soon arrived at the door. An elevator. Weighty Words looked at the metallic door. From the outside, the door looked similar to the elevator in the login lobby. There was only one button beside the door, and the effect was self-explanatory. Ding! After Hong Hu pressed the button, the elevator door opened. The 4 entered in a single file. When they entered, they realized that there was nothing in the elevator that they could control. After 5 seconds, the door closed on its own. Then the elevator started to move upward. It was unclear whether it was controlled or operated on its own. In any case, in this fantasy scenario, it would not be weird if the elevator had its own consciousness. It did not take long for it to reach the height of 1 floor before the elevator stopped, and the door opened on its own. The players safely stepped into the area of the 6th floor. Now that you mention it, my initial prediction about the single and double floors seems to have been very wrong, Hong Hu said as he walked out of the elevator. That's true, but, Autumn Wind said. From the 1st floor to this point, the difficulty seems to have been very low. Other than SCP-233, there are no particularly difficult puzzles, and there is not even one battle. That might not be the case. Fong Bujue denied it. We might have run into several instant death traps, but none of them were triggered. That's why you think it's so easy. Other than the SCP, the werewolf from earlier was obviously a monster that could have caused us to be wiped out. Other than that, now we know that we should have given the shoes to the little match girl. But what if we did something wrong, like giving her the wrong thing or not responding to her plea before the match ran out? You have a point, Weighty Words agreed. In this seemingly harmless scenario, there might be many hidden traps that can instantly wipe out the whole team. We can't be too careless now. As the 4 of them spoke, they had already finished observing the entire 6th floor. The setting of this floor was similar to the 4th floor, but the environment was different. The floor of the 6th floor was a muddy swamp, and there was limited space for people to stand on. On the murals on the 4 walls, there were black forests and heavy mountain shadows. The ceiling above them was painted with a night sky. Other than a few thin clouds, there were many stars in the sky. At the corner between the ceiling and the 2 walls, there was a full moon made of paper. The cold moonlight shone down on the swamp. The path that led up from this floor was relatively clear. It was on the wall opposite from the elevator. There was a stone staircase that led up. The bottom 5 steps of the staircase extended out from the wall and connected to this 3-dimensional space. On this floor, the area that the players could walk on was limited. Without much choice, they could only step on the relatively dry spots and move up the stairs. Be careful of your feet. Hong Hu, who walked at the front, reminded them. We don't have any items. If we fall into the middle of the swamp, it'll be hard to pull anyone out. Hey, did you hear that? Fong Bujue suddenly said as he lifted his head. Chapter 3:14. The three teammates turned to look at Brother Jew, and then they followed his gaze and raised their heads to look up. Following a strange whistling sound, on the painting on the ceiling, a dot of red and a flash of silver appeared. The two colors were expanding at a speed visible to the naked eye. Several seconds later, two figures shot out from the ceiling and fell like meteors, heading straight for the swamp. Boom! The impact created a giant mud wave that swallowed up the whole 6th floor. Due to limited landing spots and nowhere to hide, the players who were about 10 meters away from the impact could only stand where they were to prevent themselves from falling into the swamp. After being splashed by the muddy water, Fong Bujue used his hand to wipe his face, and the next second, he saw something that made his jaw drop. In the center of the impact, there was a floating figure. Her hood and shawl were as red as blood. Under her shawl was a tight linen outfit, with a leather shoulder strap in front of her chest, a python skin belt around her waist, and a pair of deerskin boots on her feet. Matching his attire were short swords, spiked hammers, and throwing knives that shone with a cold light. Little Red Riding Hood floated in the air with a cold expression. She looked about 12 or 13, and her skin was pale. An invisible force radiated from her body to form a circular force field that caused the swamp under her feet to sink in a semicircle. Theoretically speaking, with her appearance and condition, it was enough to make Hong Hu's jaw drop and Brother Jew, weighty words, and Autumn Wind's eyeballs fall to the ground. But there was something even more ridiculous. At that moment, Little Red Riding Hood was using her seemingly weak arm to carry the Tin Man's broken body with one hand. The Tin Man's 4 limbs had been chopped off, and half of his head had been chopped off. His tin body was riddled with dents and cracks. On the surface of the swamp around the point of impact, there were some tin pieces that were slowly sinking. Among the broken pieces, Fong Bujue found something that looked like an axe handle, a metal hand, and a piece of metal that looked like a tank's track. It was unclear what it was. In any case, half a minute later, all the broken pieces sank into the swamp and disappeared. I say, this little friend. Fong Bujue tried to talk to her. Who are you calling a scumbag? Scumbag. Little Red Riding Hood scolded him the moment she opened her mouth, and her tone was so aggressive that it felt like it was Fong Bujue who was asking for it. When she said that, she raised her left arm and swung the Tin Man's heavy body into the air. In a flash, the dagger around Little Red Riding Hood's waist was already out of its scabbard. Before the players understood what was happening, the Tin Man's body had fallen into the swamp, and the dagger in Little Red Riding Hood's dagger pierced through a bleeding heart. You dare to initiate a conversation with me, Little Red Riding Hood said as she slowly landed on the ground. Do you have a death wish? Fong Bujue immediately knelt before her. He raised his arms and kowtowed. My king, please have mercy. Such a cheap kneel, Autumn Wind said. Weighty words added, yes, as a man, if you surrender to violence so easily, Hong Hu added, that's too much of a lack of integrity. Little Red Riding Hood looked down at Fong Bujue's head for a few seconds and scoffed. Then she moved her gaze up to scan the faces of the other three. You dare to look down on me with such arrogance? How impudent! Pu. Another 3 men handed over their knees. I'm sorry, please have mercy. Have mercy. Fong Bujue then whispered to his teammates, now you know how cheap you are. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him, Autumn Wind replied. With a pained expression, weighty words cut in. Actually, there's no point in arguing. Brother Feng's words were not blocked by the system. This means that the system thinks that we are a bit. Are you whispering about me? Little Red Riding Hood stepped closer, and her murderous intent did not subside at all. Of course not, Fong Bujue replied. We are reflecting on our actions. Humph. Little Red Riding Hood's tone was condescending. What are you reflecting on? A bunch of ignorant scum. She seemed to be burning with anger that she had nowhere to vent. Do you really think that werewolf is my pet? Hong Hu was shocked when he heard that. How did you know? I know everything here like the back of my hand, Little Red Riding Hood interrupted. Little Red Riding Hood cut him off. That werewolf is full of lies, and he is very cunning, and you. She stepped on Feng Bujue's head. Especially you. What did you tell him? She said fiercely. He's eating Don Quixote's body now. After that, he'll go to Little Jack's house. What? This was far beyond Feng Bujue's expectation. Every time the creatures in this space kill or devour another creature, they will become a little stronger. Killing will give them new power, and it will make them more aggressive and evil. As Little Red Riding Hood spoke, she raised the blade and threw the heart on the tip of the blade into the swamp. After the Tin Man killed the witch and the lion, he was greatly strengthened. After chopping off Don Quixote's head, he received a qualitative improvement and grew a pair of iron wings. Her expression shifted. At that time, the Tin Man had the intention to challenge the boss. He flew to the 5th floor and then to the 6th floor. I had no choice but to kill him. Little Red Riding Hood moved her foot away from Feng Bujue's head. Then, she grabbed Brother Ju's collar and lifted him up. However, because Little Red Riding Hood was only 1.5 meters tall, when she did this, Brother Ju's feet did not even leave the ground. I didn't expect you idiots to cause new trouble when I left, Little Red Riding Hood said. I only placed the werewolf at the entrance of the 5th floor as a watchdog and let him eat the monsters that tried to go to the 5th floor. She glanced at the other 3 players. Because you were invited by the boss, he didn't dare to do anything to you. That's why he let you go. Humph, but you said something unnecessary. Originally, after I finished my business here, I would go back and chop off the beanstalk. But now, I have to go chase after the monster myself, and it is a very cunning one. Little Red Riding Hood raised her arm and tossed Feng Bujue behind her like she was venting her anger. Feng Bujue was pulled by a large force, and he flew toward the stone steps on the wall. He knew that if he hit the stone, he might die. However, as someone with soul's eye, there was a way to save himself. He tried his best to twist his body in midair, making an extremely strange movement. He opened his arms to cushion the impact, and his feet stepped on the air to deflect the force. Before he hit the wall, his body dropped rapidly. Like paddling water, he slid on the surface of the swamp to deflect the force before he hit the stone step. However, because Little Red Riding Hood was too strong, even though Feng Bujue tried his best, he still lost 42% of his life points. Chapter 3:15. For a strategist, when they knew the situation was bad, it was understandable that they would choose to avoid the battle. However, in a situation where there was no way to retreat, they would make a prompt decision and fight to the death. Seeing their teammate being tossed out, Hong Hu, Chiu Feng, and weighty words naturally could not continue to kneel. They immediately stood up and got into their respective stances, preparing to face the enemy. You want to fight me? Little Red Riding Hood turned back to look at the 3. Humph! Have you given up on life? Don't move! Feng Bujue shouted from afar. I'm fine. With Brother Ju's intervention, the 3 who were prepared to fight to the death held back their attacks. Little Red Riding Hood, you won't kill us. Feng Bujue stood up shakily. We are the boss's guest. You can't do that. Little Red Riding Hood was silent for a few seconds. She looked at Feng Bujue from afar and scoffed. How did you come to that conclusion? We, the travelers from another world, in your words, have certain rules when we are on this kind of short trip. Feng Bujue tried to explain in a way that the characters could understand. And you are too strong. If we fight you, the chance of survival is 0, definitely 0%. He emphasized this point repeatedly. Obviously, he was telling his teammate. As someone with soul's eye, Feng Bujue could see the difference in power more clearly. With Little Red Riding Hood's power, he could not see any chance of winning. Even the group of superheroes that he had met in Gotham City could not be compared to this little girl. Our trip will not lead to such a fatal situation, Fong Bujua said. So, I believe you don't want to kill us. He rubbed his aching back. You were merciful when you threw me over. Even if I didn't do anything, I wouldn't have died. At most, I would have fallen to the brink of death. When Little Red Riding Hood heard Fong Bujua's words, her expression did not change much. However, the murderous aura gradually disappeared. I know you're angry. I deserve it if you take it out on me. But, Fong Bujua said, since things have come to this, I suggest that you hurry up and chase after the werewolf. The few of us will go to the 7th floor to meet the boss. Let's settle our business first. If you still don't feel satisfied, you can always come back and kill me. Little Red Riding Hood muttered to herself, and then turned into a red shadow that approached Fong Bujua. She walked on the swamp as if it were flat ground, and arrived in front of her brother Ju in an instant. She said, "You have guts and your words make sense." She verbally agreed with Fong Bujua's point of view, but the warhammer in her hand mercilessly smashed down. With a crack, the warhammer hit Fong Bujua's left knee and smashed it into pieces. But I hate to follow other people's orders, and the boss is no exception. Little Red Riding Hood pulled the bloody warhammer out of Fong Bujua's knee and sneered, "So, this is an additional punishment for you." She looked at Fong Bujua's painful face, and showed a satisfied expression. Then she turned and left. When she passed by Hong Hu and the others, they did not even dare to breathe. They just waited quietly for Little Red Riding Hood to pass. No one spoke, and no one made eye contact, until Little Red Riding Hood entered the elevator and the elevator door closed. Only then did Chiu Feng dare to raise his voice to ask Fong Bujua, who was far away, "Are you okay, Brother Fong?" "Nonsense," Fong Bujua said. "I didn't turn into white light and disappear, which means I'm still alive." "We know that," Hong Hu said. "But we're worried that you've been inflicted with the bleeding effect." His concern was crucial because they could not use the items in their inventory in this scenario. If Fong Bujua was inflicted with the bleeding effect and the bleeding could not be stopped, then he would be dead. "I'm fine. I'm only inflicted with a broken bone. I won't continue to lose blood," Fong Bujua replied. "I have 8% life points left. Just don't get injured anymore." 8% is very dangerous, Weighty Word said. Furthermore, this kind of injury recovers very slowly. If there is no item to remove this status, the broken bone might stay with you until the end of the scenario. Fong Bujua said, "You have a point. In that case, I'll have to ask the three of you to carry me." He was obviously using this as a pretext to make a fuss. "Oh, by the way, when I was picked up by Little Red Riding Hood, I dropped my broom on the ground." He pointed at a spot not far from the three of them. "Don't forget to take it." 10 minutes later, the four had crossed the swamp and successfully entered the painting through the stone step. The large Weighty Words was responsible for carrying Fong Bujua in the middle of the group. Chiu Feng used the broom to scout ahead, and Hong Hu was responsible for covering the back. The stone steps were longer than they expected, and they continued to climb. The slope became steeper, and the path became narrower. The more they walked, the more dangerous it became. After another 10 minutes, they reached a place that was quite high above sea level. Looking down from there, it was a blurry fog. The swamp under the fog showed many beautiful colors under the moonlight. It was like a dream. "Please don't drop me." Fong Bujua put on the witch's pointy hat and purposely used an old voice to say, "I'm just a bag of old bones. If I fall, I'll die. I would like to throw you down the cliff, but the system won't let me," Weighty Words replied. "Ah. Back then, when I was fighting a fiery demon alone, I also fell down the cliff." Fong Bujua touched the pointed hat on his head. "After that battle, I was promoted from a gray robe to a white robe." "You're using Gandalf again, aren't you?" Hong Hu said. "You sure know how to make up stories." "Hey, I think we've reached the end. Chiu Feng, who was at the front of the group, interrupted their conversation and turned back to say. Everyone raised their heads to look, only to see that directly in front of them, about 200 meters away, was the top of the stone steps. The place was covered in gray clouds. The clouds were in the shape of a ring, and there was a sound coming from the ring. It sounded like water. The players picked up their pace and walked to the end of the stone step. They stepped onto a smooth surface. Here, they saw another scene that was enough to stun them. In the ring of clouds above their heads, there was a waterfall, and it was a reverse waterfall. The turbulent water flow ignored the law of gravity and rushed straight up. Standing under the clouds, one would have the illusion that they were hanging upside down in the air. Weighty words put down Feng Bujue, and the latter stood on one leg with one hand on his waist. He lifted his head to look up. What do you guys think? Hong Hu thought about it for a few seconds before saying, I have a plan. The three of us will work together to throw Brother Feng up there. That's a good idea. Chiu Feng agreed immediately. Weighty Words scratched his chin and said, as long as the team tab doesn't show that Brother Feng is dead in a few minutes, it means that the path above is safe, and we can successfully get to the 7th floor. That's not a bad idea. Facing the trio's malicious plan, Feng Bujue agreed calmly. My leg is injured, so it'll take a lot of effort to jump up on my own. If I miss the jump and fall from this height into the swamp, I'll definitely die. He then removed the hat and passed it to Weighty Word. For the sake of safety, I'll leave the plot item to you guys. After you throw me up, just wait for 3 minutes. If I'm still alive by then, you guys can jump up one by one. Hong Hu was quite surprised by Feng Bujue's cooperative attitude. Actually, his suggestion was partly a joke, but he did not expect the person involved to agree to it. Since the plan had been decided, after discussing some details, they put it into action. Weighty Words, Hong Hu, and Chiu Feng stood in position. They carried Feng Bujue and tossed him into the air. He flew headfirst into the whirlpool. Once his body touched the reverse waterfall, Feng Bujue felt all the blood in his body rush from his feet to his head. Gravity seemed to have been reversed at that moment, and he fell into the water. As mentioned earlier, he did not know how to swim. Of course, in such a strong current, it did not make much of a difference whether he knew how to swim or not. Feng Bujue was like a substance that had been tossed into the toilet. He was dragged along by the current and could not stop himself from being dragged around at high speed. He could not even open his eyes, and his body was under quite a lot of water pressure. However, this did not cost him any life points, and the cold water temporarily numbed the pain in his left leg. About 30 seconds later, Feng Bujue suddenly felt the pressure on his body lighten. His back was leaning against something, and he found himself lying on the ground. He tried to sit up, and this action caused his upper body to poke out of the water. Feng Bujue opened his eyes. He was not used to the bright light. When he saw his surroundings clearly, a rare expression of shock appeared on his face. At that moment, he was looking at his own bathroom, and he was lying inside the bathtub. What the? Did I fall asleep in the shower? Feng Bujue mumbled. So, after the battle for the mantle ended, Brother Ju went offline to take a shower, and he fell asleep inside the bathtub. Everything that happened before was just a dream. This was impossible. Feng Bujue did not have the luck to enjoy a forbidden skill like, the main character wakes up to realize everything is just a dream. Current quest has changed. Main quest updated, the system said. Feng Bujue lowered his head to look. He realized that he was still wearing the clown costume, and he understood everything. After sighing, he climbed out from the bathtub and opened the game menu to inspect it. In the team tab, the names of his 3 teammates were still there, and they were all alive. In the quest tab, all surviving players are to enter the detective club. This quest was not ticked off, but a new quest appeared underneath it. escape from the memory space, and return to the 7th floor of the testing building. Other than that, there was another important change: the items inside his inventory could be used again. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.